in India is how the legacy of that friendship has endured. It's multifaceted, it's changed with the times, especially in the current context, and both countries have adjusted and evolved to keep that friendship going. And I think this would also be a test of that, on what that joint declaration is tomorrow, Gaurav.
Oh, indeed. In fact,
it all come down to that.
This is a relationship where both people to people, you love each other. You know, Indians really are very close to Russians. Russians, they love Indians.
They love Bollywood music,
They love, you know, from Raj Kapoor, Mera Juta Hai Japani, Avara Hu. Each time you go, oh, Jimmy, 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 Aja, Aja, Aja. That's something you hear on the streets of Russia. They love Indian music. They love Indian films. They love Indian people, and vice versa. Strategic ties. Now, does it escalate to the economic ties? Because India stand up with Prime Minister Narendra Modi going to the airport, the kind of red carpet that's being laid out for President Putin, the message to America is very clear. This relationship has withstood the test of time, and it's not at the cost of Americans, and Americans will not dictate how we pursue our friendship with Russia.
It's a calculated risk,
because
the messaging,
no risk. The messaging is very clear. It's not one at the cost of the other.
No, I agree with you, till a point, but it is also messaging in terms of there will be consequences and ramifications of this visit, which we have diplomatically calculated.
And so that decided that's okay. We're okay with that.
Yeah, this risk has been assessed, but a lot will define on how comfortable we make both sides. How much we walk in terms of Russia tomorrow when the joint declaration is there. Because like I said, in a month you have a delegation on trade coming in. Will that 50% be reduced to 15%? That will also tantamount to how much oil we end up buying. So
it's not just oil. Now you're going way beyond oil. You're talking about nuclear
defense.
energy.
I agree with all of that. But it's a tightrope walk, Gaurav. The consequences will be felt where our relationship with America is concerned. So therefore the tightrope
So that's for America to think.
That's
for America to think.
Because we've got a good relationship.
So I think the strategy very clearly for us.
We've actually thought this through. India's actually thought this through. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been rolling out the red carpet in the manner in which you're rolling out the red carpet.
We managed to.
No,
we
did not come for G20.
No, I'm saying
he did not come for G20.
We have always. I'm talking about the historical context
of it. Current
we have
G20.
always managed to do it, which is walk that tightrope diplomatic walk, both with America and Russia, and we'll know tomorrow. And I think what is poised is correct. In that manner, I do agree with you. What we are poised for is great leaps, hopefully, in our friendship and economic solidarity where Russia is concerned, and we keep it going with the US.
Okay, I'm just going to highlight here that President Putin, in our exclusive, has spoken about Trump, has spoken of tariff, and has spoken about how America has attempted to punish India for purchasing oil. He's spoken on all of those fronts as well. Since Preeti and Gaurav have brought those up, I'll plug that in quickly. Let me bring in Amit Bharadwaj. He's joining us live from right outside the Palam airport. That's where President Putin will be landing in less than an hour from now. Amit, we understand that looking at the kind of security deployment there, Prime Minister Modi could be reaching there in a few moments from now.
Absolutely right, Akshata. We are standing right in front of the Palam technical area. The entire area has been cordoned off right now, and you would see the policemen standing out here, and they're literally standing here in order for us to leave the space, vacate the space, because PM protocol has been put into place, and which is very much the indication that Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself could be coming to the Palam technical airport to receive President Putin. And this also reflects the kind of strong friendship and bond that they share. When you had, as you were, all of you were also discussing that meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin back in China. And it also sends across a message, the kind of bond they share, the friendship they share, and what could be stored in the card. So on the basis that Prime Minister's protocol, security protocol, has been put into place at Palam Technical Airport area itself, we can certainly say there's a high possibility that PM Modi would be coming himself here in order to receive President Putin. Back to you.
So we'll be standing by for those images from your cameras, Amit, in just about 45 minutes from now. 6:30 is when Putin will be touching down in the national capital. And from what we're hearing from our sources, Prime Minister Modi will personally greet him at the airport. And then it's over to his residence, 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, for a dinner. What's on the menu? We'll hopefully know in the coming hours. What's the delicacy in Russia?
So this
Both of you have been.
Snails.
Yeah,
Snails?
Yes, in butter.
So lot of food. No, Russia is
It's a
very
bit like-
diverse.
yeah.
Very diverse. It's such a huge country. Food in the eastern part is very different from the western
that's
part. Moscow is very different. St. Petersburg is altogether different. So lots of great food. A lot of bread, of course. A lot of bread. Lots of cakes, pastries.
It's traditional, a
cheese,
lot of meats.
Lot of meats.
You know, because I remember it was so strange. I have such a strange memory of Russia because I got married during the times of COVID. And
Yeah.
at that
And you
point,
went to Russia.
and that because so that's the friendship between India and Russia because they were the only ones who were giving visas to India during the times of COVID. So I actually went to Russia, and food is in terms of there's a fair amount of very heavy, understandably on meats.
Yeah.
But where St. Petersburg meets Europe, then you get the whole European experience. You know, the culinary experience in Russia comes into St. Petersburg, and that's the advent in terms of where.
And that's where
Europe-
Putin's from.
Or you go to Kazan, for example. The food is completely different. Where we were covering the BRICS summit, different parts of Russia, but great food and greater hospitality.
Clearly,
the
I have
moment
to-
they learn you're an Indian, the food is great. Of course, at the Prime Minister's residence, it's all vegetarian. A lot of millets thrown in. A lot of Indian food comes in. President Putin usually does try something that's Indian.
Does
And
he see
there's-
that's where the palace intrigue comes
Yeah.
into question? I really want to know because what you've heard.
How open is he to
everything-
those things?
Will
Yeah.
he be open to trying the food which is being served, or is it going to be like he'll have dinner with the Prime Minister, but there'll be food which has been bought in for him specifically?
I'm sure
That's
they'll also
where-
cater to his tastes,
And
inevitably.
that's where the close trust and bond between India and Russia and Prime Minister Narendra Modi
I want to
and
know
President
about that
Putin
because, like I said, this is
comes
where
in.
that entire palace intrigue.
Well,
like,
fine.
there's so
we'll
much
get you
in.
a world exclusive Putin interview, but we'll also get you what's on the menu here on India Today. So we'll get you that exclusive as well lined up. But let's bring this back to also what to expect at 9 p.m. when that Vladimir Putin 100-minute interview airs here on India Today. We've been giving you glimpses of what to expect. And one of the aspects that we've been speaking about here is how this isn't an interview just focused on India-Russia. Vladimir Putin took questions on every possible issue, including the Ukraine war. What did he have to say about it? What's the end game for the Russian president? Here's an excerpt.
What is the end game for Vladimir Putin in Ukraine?
Так я же сказал.
Well, I've just said it.
Мы признали вот эти...
We have recognized, listen,
Мы 8 лет не
for
признавали
8 years we did not recognize
самопровозглашенных
the self-declared republics.
лет.
For 8 years,
провозгласили
they
независимость.
have declared the
А мы
independence
старались наладить
And we were
отношения
trying
с остальной частью
to build
Украины.
relations between the rest of Ukraine
Потом,
and
когда
these
поняли, что это
republics.
невозможно,
When
что
we
их просто уничтожают,
Understood that it's
вынуждены
impossible,
были
that they're simply
признать
being destroyed, we were forced to recognize them, and not simply
в части
recognize them in,
а в
as
рамках
their partial territory,
административных
but within the
границ,
administrative
когда они
borders,
существовали еще в
when they
советское
existed
время,
back in the Soviet times,
а потом во времена независимой
and later
Украины,
during the times of the independent Ukraine,
обретения
after
независимости,
it gained
в рамках
independence.
административных границ.
In the
И мы сразу Украине
administrative
сказали,
limits,
украинским войскам, люди не
lines.
хотят с вами жить. Они вышли на референдум, проголосовали
So
за
the people, the voters,
Выведите свои войска.
came to the referendum
И никаких
and voted
военных действий.
for everyone to withdraw troops from there and not to conduct
Предпочитали
any armed
воевать. Ну вот сейчас
actions there.
завоевались.
But they preferred to wage war. And now it all came to a head. And it all comes to one thing.
Вооруженным путем освободить
Either we do that
эти территории,
through
либо украинские
military
войска
action will liberate the territories, or the Ukrainian troops will withdraw and leave these territories and stop killing people there.
Arm twisting methods that are being adopted, and I name it, it's America. How do you plan to circumvent all this? Will you pull back or push harder?
Okay, so that was what, and just a glimpse really of what the Russian president had to say on the Ukraine war. There's a far more detailed segment conversation about the war, what's happened in the last few years, and international pressure that's building on Russia. But Preeti, to you, on what really you're going to be looking forward to the most in that particular interview. If there's one issue that you want addressed in that interview or you're seeking answers to, which is that?
I want to get an understanding on what President Putin has to say about President Trump. I think that would be very interesting because I think that will make international headlines, especially in the current context where we stand. So I think that is very, very important. And I'd be watching onto that where internationally is concerned. And the second thing, I think, Gaurav would agree with me. I think the spotlight is the defense deals. The S-400 from Russia has proved to be a great, asset for us, especially in Operation Sindoor. Russia is the only country, if I'm not wrong, that actually shares cutting-edge tech, the current cutting-edge tech with India, which most other countries don't quite. And, I'd want to know, in terms of defense, what are we looking at, where we stand. So personally, from the Indian perspective, I would be looking at the defense deals and, what comes of that. And internationally, I'm dying to know what he has to say about President Trump.
And what about you, Gaurav? You've told me that what you're looking forward to is understanding the future of the India-Russia story, but beyond that, internationally, because like Preeti said, this is going to be grabbing headlines across the world. What is the one issue you're looking forward to hearing about from Putin?
Again, what's extremely significant is how do you move forward in trade ties? You have great defense ties. What kind of technology are you sharing when it comes to, let's say, the Su-57 fifth generation fighter jets? What kind of technology is being transferred to India? What kind of technology can we absorb? Point one. Point two, we're told nuclear submarines being leased is still work in progress. However, the S-500 system, now that would be an absolute game changer vis-a-vis not just Pakistan, and Pakistan would become too puny when you have that kind of missiles, offensive and defensive, because that's something that will also make China rework its entire strategy. That gives a lot of strength to India. The fact that he's also saying he's exposing American double standards is amazing. That, that's something that I'm very, we've been talking about it. America continues to buy from Russia, but does not want India to buy and is penalizing India. President Putin also thinks that's not fair. How do you take that conversation forward?
Actually, one more thing which I think, what I think will be critical for India, and I'd really be, looking at that very closely, is, the labor pact between Russia and India. Will President Putin address that? Because this is a time where you've had countries like America, which are closing in ranks in terms of visas where India is concerned. And Russia, hopefully, will be opening up because they need labor, they need even, semi-skilled, skilled, labor. So what are we looking at? Are we looking at Russia absorbing a lot of that strength that we have? That would be interesting. So two things which I'd be looking closely at. And
there's a lot of it which will also become clear tomorrow when you have that bilateral between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin and the signing of several MOUs. Preeti and Gaurav, of course, will be with me. We're going to continue tracking those updates. In just about 40 minutes from now, we'll get the first picture of Russian President Putin touching down in India, perhaps showing a namaste to all of us as he touches down in the national capital. We're going to continue our broadcast here and getting you live updates from Moscow as well. Preeti and Gaurav have been to Moscow, which is why producers have been kind enough to send me to Moscow, courtesy our studio backdrop. Both of you are in New Delhi, clearly, looking at that backdrop. We've ensured it that way, so that at least this way, I'm transported to Russia. We're going to continue getting you all of those updates. Stay tuned here. You're tuning in to our blanket rolling non-stop coverage of Russian President Vladimir Putin touching down in India for a crucial 24-hour visit.
सैल्यूट है जी। आप देश की रक्षा में जान लगा देते हैं और आप घर घर में तार लगाते हैं जी। ई बीम टेक्नोलॉजी से बनी, न जले न पिघले, सबकी रक्षा करे।
हम सरहद पर लोगों की रक्षा करते हैं और आप देश के अंदर। सैल्यूट तो बनता है जी।
अपार अणुशक्ति फायर प्रोटेक्ट वायर, अपार देश का तार।
Just talking about sustainability and trade, there is immense pressure on India and on Russia when it comes to oil. India has suffered in terms of the kind of pressure that we're seeing from West. How can both countries handle this Western pressure and sanctions? really look at that as a strategic interest to recognize the Taliban at a time when the world is still saying they have not given equal rights to women?
Hi, Sana here with a quick AQI update. Delhi 274, Mumbai 172, Kolkata 191, Bangalore 116, Chennai 69, Hyderabad 162. You really look at that as a strategic interest to recognize the Taliban at a time when the world is still saying they have not given equal rights to women? You really look at that as a strategic interest to recognize the Taliban at a time when the world is still saying they have not given equal rights to women?
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Arm twisting methods that are being adopted, and I name it, it's America. How do you plan to circumvent all this? Will you pull back or push harder?
Presented by Kia, movement that inspires.
Hello and welcome. Good evening. You're tuned into India Today's non-stop coverage as Vladimir Putin is set to touch down in India in less than 30 minutes from now. We've also got the man himself speaking to us here on India Today. This is a world exclusive you don't want to miss out on. We've been giving you glimpses of what to expect from that exclusive conversation. But you'll hear from the Russian president on a slew of issues on his friendship story with Prime Minister Modi, anecdotes like the time when he traveled with Prime Minister Modi in a car. But let's get you the big breaking news that's coming in right now. Putin will be landing in India in less than 30 minutes. Here's what sources are telling us. That Prime Minister Modi may be receiving Putin personally at the Palam airport in Delhi. And remember the time when Prime Minister Modi and President Putin traveled in one car together, which became a huge headline moment across the world? Expect a repeat of that. Sources are telling us that once President Putin touches down in Delhi, Prime Minister Modi and he will travel in the same car all the way to 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, to the Prime Minister's residence, where there is going to be a dinner meeting as well. But it's that bonhomie, that messaging, that friendship that really makes this story of the Putin-Modi friendship stand out. The fact that they always ensure that every single minute they spend together talking about how to better that friendship story between India and Russia. Those pictures that you see on your screens were from Tianjin, which made headlines globally. It had everyone talking, particularly America. And you remember then that US President Donald Trump became rather jittery seeing these images of friendship, of bonhomie, because it was the exact opposite of what he wanted. Now you're going to see that exact moment being replicated again, this time in Delhi. Gaurav Sawant is with us. Gaurav, you were there in Tianjin when this happened. So you remember the frenzy that it created, the absolute frenzy, because it was a completely unplanned moment. Now again, we're hearing from our sources, Prime Minister Modi, after receiving President Putin at the airport, could also take him in his car to his residence.
You know, this just shows how close the relationship is, and you're absolutely right. When this was happening in Tianjin, we just couldn't understand what was happening, because the Russian president waited a long time for Prime Minister Narendra Modi to arrive. They traveled in the same car. That car remained there for quite some time. So initially they kept talking in the car, and then ultimately the car moved. It was much later we were told that the two traveled together. They wanted to have their private conversation. And what better place than a car? It's only the two of them and their interpreters. If that's happening once again, this just goes on to show that this is a signal being sent out to the world. Remember, there were many in the West who wanted India to kind of reduce our dependence on Russia, not to be so close to Russia. Some said that India should be criticizing Russia. Now the same West is actually telling India, can you please tell Russia? Look at the change in tone. India hasn't changed. Russia hasn't changed. It's the tone, the talking down tone of the West that is now changing. And this just goes on to indicate how when two leaders are working for the betterment of their countries, their respective countries, everyone ultimately starts aligning themselves with a larger goal. And especially when, as the Russian president in that interview, and I don't want to give out those details because I want our viewers to look at that interview, hear it from themselves, for themselves, what the Russian president intends to say, especially about the Ukraine conflict, America, and of course his relationship with Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
What we're going to do is, considering there's so much anticipation and build-up and excitement over that particular picture of Prime Minister Modi and President Putin when they will be exiting from the Palam airport, and they will be together in the same car. There's a lot of excitement over that. That was one of the questions we actually asked President Putin about that moment that happened in Tianjin. So I'll play that out for our viewers in just a moment. Let me just bring in our reporters for a quick update. Amit Bharadwaj is joining us live from the Palam airport in Delhi. We've got Pranay Upadhyay of India Today Global standing by from 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, from the Prime Minister's residence. Amit, to you first for a quick update. Less than 30 minutes to go. The scheduled time is 6:30 when we will see Putin touching down in the national capital. I'm sure security is at an all-time high in the stretch that you're in.
Absolutely right, Akshata. In fact, entire media crew which was standing around the Palam Technical Airport has been now moved a bit away from the airport. I'll try to get you a view from here as well, from where we would see the two leaders, coming out of the airport, Palam Technical Airport here in the national capital. Prime Minister Modi is in most likelihood expected to be here.
Quickly, an update that's coming in. Just stay with me. We understand that now Putin's fleet has entered Indian airspace. So that means that the touchdown could happen anytime soon. 6:30 is what we're hearing. So that update that's just come in right now, that the plane in which Putin is traveling, it's entered into Indian airspace. Go ahead, Amit.
Yes, Akshata, in fact, what we are given to understand is that Russian fleet, or rather President Putin's fleet, is already in the Indian airspace, which also means that this wait will be over shortly, maybe next 25 to 30 minutes, and there will be a touchdown of the craft and the fleet at Palam Technical Airport here in the national capital. And around that time, we would also see Prime Minister Modi reaching the airport personally, in all likelihood receiving the Russian President, President Putin out here. And then, as Gaurav was also mentioning, anything of that sort cannot be ruled out, because we had seen what happened during the SCO summit. And, that's the kind of bonhomie and friendship, also messaging that needs to be sent out.
Both leaders are about those candid moments, are about those important optics, knowing full well that that speaks volumes really for all the countries, maybe the West particularly, watching out. Pranay Upadhyay of India Today Global joining us live from outside the Prime Minister's residence. Pranay, right after touching down, we're hearing that Prime Minister Modi and President Putin will travel in the same car. Think September 2025, think Tianjin. They'll travel in the same car from the Palam airport to the Prime Minister's residence for dinner. What's on the menu for the dinner? What's also on the table? What's on the menu when they meet together today and travel in that car?
Akshata, this is going to be a significant departure from the protocol if both leaders travel in India in the same car, because there are indications we have been given to understand by our sources that both the leaders can travel again after 3 months in same vehicle, in the same car, and that could be Indian Prime Minister's vehicle, Indian Prime Minister's car. And if that happens, that is going to be another big departure and a big thing. And that is also, as Gaurav was mentioning, that is the expression of confidence in India's security, in Indian Prime Minister. And if both leaders will be coming to 7 LKM, the Lok Kalyan Marg, and there are special arrangements. The Prime Minister House is specially lit up for this event. There is a heavy security deployment. Behind us is also a heavy security deployment here by the Delhi Police and other paramilitary forces. So not only the security deployment is there, the special arrangements are also being made in Prime Minister's office and in his residence to welcome President Vladimir Putin. That is going to be a private dinner hosted by Prime Minister Modi, but definitely a big departure from the protocol that Prime Minister not only would be receiving President Vladimir Putin at the airport, but both the leaders are likely to travel in the same vehicle if that happens.
So that's a photo op to watch out for. But let's talk about what happened in September 2025 and hear from Vladimir Putin himself about what really triggered that particular moment, what led to President Putin and Prime Minister Modi traveling in the same car in Tianjin. What was discussed between the two leaders? We asked him in that exclusive conversation. Here's a glimpse.
very interesting question, because when you met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in SCO, and there was this picture and video of you and him going in a car, and we're showing it to our viewers right now. You were traveling in a car with him. Was it pre-planned, or how did it go about? How did it happen? And what did you discuss in the car?
Вы знаете, обсуждали текущие вопросы.
We were talking about just the current agenda. It was not pre-planned. We just went outside into the street, and my car was there, and I suggested that we should get together, just, as a sign of friendship, of comradeship. There's nothing, no complicated orchestration, just as friends. We got together in one car and we spoke. Along the road, there was always something to talk about. And, we had a conversation. We even sat in the car for quite some time. And then I said, yes, we should go because they're waiting for us. But there's nothing special about that. It just testifies to the fact that there's a lot we have to talk about. And these topics are of importance to us.
Right. President Sir, the fact that you're going to go to India, you just said that both leaders are going to cement the guarantees that you give each other. What are the kind of announcements that we can expect? We've heard about technology transfer. We've heard about trade enhancement. What are the solid announcements during this visit? And I ask you this is because the world, and you know who I mean, would be watching.
Ну, то, что мир будет следить за
нашим the world is going to be watching. I don't think there's anything special about that. Because, India is a great country, 1.5 billion people. It's a developing economy where the rate of growth is 7.7%. This is the first result in the world. Prime Minister Modi has managed to achieve that, and this says a lot. The Indian nation can take pride in. There's a lot to be proud of. Of course, there are always detractors, critics who believe that this can be done better, but that said, the result is evident. We've got a whole plan for cooperation which covers the most important spheres and fields. The most important ones are certainly oriented towards the future, and one of them is high technology. India and Russia are working together in outer space exploration, in energy, nuclear energy in particular, which is well known because, one of the leaders in that field. Also shipbuilding, aircraft building. We have very many interesting directions which are oriented towards the future. Or let's take artificial intelligence. We'll probably talk about that later. But this is one of the key technologies of the future which is reshaping the world as we speak, because it manages to multiply things many-fold, but at the same time it creates certain challenges to be addressed. And we'll talk about all of that. And as Prime Minister Modi thinks and what I think, well, we'll choose what is of the greatest significance at this stage, and we'll help with that.
Agreement, sir?
Well, of
course. But we should probably not announce them right now because, all of that is going to be announced in the course of the visit. We will present that to the public. And then the colleagues will present all of these agreements to us, and we'll have to give our final approval to these agreements.
That's the Russian president there speaking about the time when he invited Prime Minister Modi to travel with him in the same car, the messaging that was involved in it as well. As we continue to track all the latest updates and count down, importantly, to Vladimir Putin's touchdown in the national capital in just about 15 minutes from now. Let me once again reintroduce all of our reporters. We have Shivani Sharma, Amit Bharadwaj, Pranay Upadhyay. Here in the studio with me is Gaurav Sawant, and also joining us is Sandeep Unitan. Sandeep, what do you make of the kind of messaging involved here? Both Prime Minister Modi and President Putin know the importance of sending across a message of this friendship, of the warmth and the relationship that they share, and know exactly who's watching.
Absolutely, Akshada. And, it seems to be a replay of what they did at Tianjin, that armored limousine. We don't know yet which car they're going to travel in. Is it going to be President Putin's Aurus limousine? It is the Russian equivalent of the US president's Beast that's also going to be here in Delhi, we are told. We don't know if it's going to be that car that they'll travel in, or is it going to be Prime Minister Modi's armored vehicle. But the fact is that the Aurus is believed to be here in Delhi, and it is one-of-a-kind vehicle that the Russians have produced in the last 5 or 6 years. It's an armored vehicle. It's almost 7 tons, and that is something, and it can basically withstand any kind of attack from, rocket-propelled grenades, machine guns, armor-piercing rounds, and even it's believed to be anti-tank resistant. So that is one vehicle that we're going to be seeing in Delhi in the next couple of days. So it is very interesting, the fact that the Prime Minister is choosing to ride with President Putin shows the warmth of this relationship, really. It's unlike any other relationship. It's unlike any other, state visit even. And I would go so far as to say that this is the most consequential visit possibly in India in the 21st century. Given the times that we are in right now, Russia is in the middle of a war. India is facing unprecedented diplomatic pressure, tariffs from the United States, and is being forced to choose, take a side. And India is choosing to do what is in India's supreme national interest. So that is really what we're going to be seeing over here, an independent Indian foreign policy, India choosing to take the path that suits its national interests more. Akshita.
Very true. And the messaging here is very important. It's a short visit by President Putin to India, but one that's loaded with messaging, loaded with symbolism. And there's a lot of mention of that, by the way, in the interview that we will be airing at 9 p.m. tonight. Yes, we're counting down to Putin touching down in the national capital, but we're also counting down to the biggest interview of 2025, that big world exclusive where we've spoken to Vladimir Putin, and this by far is the longest interview he's ever done, 100-minute long interview where he sat down, took every single issue, every global issue that he's addressed. That's coming up at 9 p.m. tonight. So you'll hear from the man himself about why his visit is so crucial to India. Gaurav, we've also got our panelists with us on this broadcast. We've got Lieutenant General Tiny Dhillon. General Dhillon, I'd like to begin with you on this broadcast as well. Of what to you, sir, makes this visit so crucial for both India and Russia, I'd say?
Good evening, ma'am, and good evening to Gaurav and the fellow panelists and your viewers. India, Russia, and before that, India, Soviet Union. We go back a long way in history, in our relationship, in our cultural exchanges, and more important than anything else, in this diplomatic world, the mutual faith we have, the mutual trust we have with each other. Russia का नाम आने से दिल में लगता है कि किसी अच्छे आदमी की बात कर रहे हैं. He will stand by us, he will not let us down. Whereas, as we all know, in today's international diplomacy, believing someone is very difficult. Today's friend can be tomorrow's enemy, whereas Russia has always proved to be a friend, and friend on whom you can rely. 1971 war, Goa liberation, or even after that. And practically after independence, all three defense forces, if we are so strong today, the basis of the strength of our armed forces was basically because Soviet Union provided us all the wherewithal in terms of equipment and what have you. So we have a great relationship, not only in defense, also in cultural relationship. I remember when I was in Russia, I've been there 2-3 times. Once in Red Square, I was walking, and since I wear a turban, I can be identified from far away. An old Russian man walked up to me and he said, "Mr. Singh, India?" I said, "Yes." And he started humming, "Mera juta hai Japani, meri patloon Englishstani, sir pe laal topi Rusi, fir bhi dil hai Hindustani." They are so fond of our music, they're so fond of our soft power. And I think it's a great relationship. And Mr. President Putin's visit to India is coming at a very crucial time when there's a lot of churning going around in international relations. And it couldn't have come at any time other than this. I think it's a golden opportunity to reap the best output from this visit. And I'm actually looking forward to it. And as the program goes by, we'll discuss more about it.
And I hope you're also looking forward to our exclusive, General Dhillon.
Yes,
that's at 9 p.m.
Absolutely.
Where we're going to be hearing from Putin on exactly what you spoke of the warmth that India and Russia share. Gaurav, we constantly hear this term, when you describe the India-Russia story, all-weather friend, all-weather dost. Define that for us, Gaurav. You've been to Russia, and like General Dhillon says, there's a very deep connect, people-to-people connect that you get to see on ground.
So, before the 1971 war, India and Russia and then Soviet Union actually signed a pact, which was a mutual defense pact. And that meant an attack on India would have meant an attack on Soviet Union, and that they would defend us. So when the Americans were trying to put pressure on India and they sent in their fleet in the Indian Ocean, the Russians sent in their fleet. To ensure that the Chinese don't trouble us, they had two divisions on the Sino-Soviet border. And that ensured that India was able to ensure the birth of Bangladesh and the liberation of Bangladesh and, that operation. Subsequently, let me talk about the Kargil war. India wanted T-90 tanks. Russia took T-90 tanks out of its armor and gave it to India. A nuclear submarine. No other country in the world is willing to lease a nuclear submarine. Russia has done that for India. Our own nuclear submarine, the kind of technology they've shared with us. Fighter pilot Su-30 MKI, Russian aircraft now made in India, MiG-21, MiG-27, the entire MiG series and Su series of aircraft, our aircraft carrier, our submarines. So there's so much of defense cooperation between India and Russia. Now that's one part of the story. The kind of technology they're willing to give you, the kind of access they're willing to give you, and the kind of, emotionally, their people want to come and spend time with you, learn about our culture, learn about our way of life, and the close partnership between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Putin personally. That's also taking this relationship to a new level, to a higher level, that level of trust that the two enjoy. So people to people, government to government, now we need to see whether business to business, it expands.
Very true. Before I bring in Dr. Datta, since there's so much curiosity of exactly what the Russian president has told us in this world exclusive, and I'm not exaggerating when I say the entire world right now is waiting for that particular interview. Gaurav did touch upon, the friendship that's lasted for decades, really, between India and Russia. What does President Putin have to say about really this friendship story? How does he see it going forward? What's the next step, really, in this relationship? Listen in to one particular excerpt.
Dear viewers, hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Aaj Tak India Today, and I'm Anjana Om Kashyap, and we're at Kremlin today, and you're about to witness history, a very historic moment. It is said that when two old friends meet, they have their private jokes. They have a lot of banter, they have a lot of fun, and they have a bonhomie or camaraderie. But the others in the room might feel a little uncomfortable. And why do I say this? I say this because as the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, meets Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi, the world will be watching very, very closely. Vladimir Putin is undoubtedly one of the most influential politicians of the world whose decisions don't just affect Russia, but numerous nations across the world. He's a very compelling and enigmatic figure on the world stage. It just doesn't get more exciting than this.
Well, that's right, Anjana. Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan. We have with us a man who is known to be one of the world's longest-serving leaders. He's seen it all, through wars and economic recessions, from disintegration of countries to a changed world order, from Boris Yeltsin to Donald Trump, from Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Manmohan Singh to Narendra Modi. He's seen the world change right in front of him, and he's taken Russia through very turbulent times and yet has cemented his position as a force to reckon with. Thank you so much, President, for doing this with us. You're in conversation with India Today and Aaj Tak. That's the President of the Russian Federation for you.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on our network. How are you doing?
Надеюсь, что и вам у нас в России.
Well, I do hope that you find it great in Russia, in Moscow. You like Moscow and the Kremlin, where we're working.
Плану.
Well, as you can see, everything is according to plan. On the whole, we're happy with the economic situation. And what's most important, this month, I'm very happy that I'm going to meet, as you have just pointed out, my friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We agreed to meet in India a long time ago. There's a lot to talk about because the range of our cooperation with India is very huge. I'm not even talking about history of our relations because this history is of a unique nature. And I would also like to point out that the path that India has traveled since gaining its independence, just over the 77 years, which is a very short span in the scale of history, and India has managed to travel a great way. And I'm going to dwell on that a little bit later. But, you know, when we live our daily lives, we hardly notice the changes that are currently afoot. It rarely happens when we notice these changes. But if we have a look back at the history, we'll see that what transpired in India is, to a large extent, a miracle. Well, I don't think there are many people living in India who know that the longevity, the life expectancy in India over the 77 years has...
We will talk about longevity in some time from now.
We're certainly going to talk about that. But be that as it may, our relations with India are developing across different ranges, different avenues. I'm very happy to have this chance to meet Prime Minister Modi. And not just business ties, but also personal ties.
Okay, we're just about 5 minutes away from President Putin touching down in Delhi. We understand that his plane has already entered Indian airspace. There's quite a bit of movement happening at the Palam airport, and I'll get you those updates with our reporter. But let me also bring in on this broadcast Sergei Strokan, senior journalist from Moscow. Thank you very much for your time, Sergei. There's been a whole lot of talk, of course, of the Russian president's interview to us here at the India Today group. But take us through really why Russia is looking forward to this visit by President Putin to India.
I don't think it would be exaggeration to say that President Putin's visit to India is probably one of the most dramatic moments in the whole history of Russia-Indian relations. Actually, it's a moment of truth. And there's a number of reasons to believe that at this particular moment, we see both entirely new opportunities for our cooperation and multiplying challenges also. And that's why, you see, we'll have to see that both leaders would show that they are able to withstand that growing pressure which is coming from the West, which is trying somehow to scale down and or to stop even Russian-Indian cooperation. If we say all-weather partnership, it should be partnership not only in a good weather, but also it should withstand rain, storm, tsunami, or other political turbulences of all nature.
Well put. It has to survive all kinds of turbulence, and it truly has. Time-tested and otherwise. There's a reason we refer to them as all-weather friends, as Sergei put it, through storms, through hurricanes, through tsunamis, through it all. This friendship has truly stood tall. Before I bring in all of our panelists, we'll also take this across to our reporters on the ground because there's quite a bit of movement right now taking place on the streets of the national capital. By the way, the heart of Delhi right now has been completely secured. Huge security deployment that's been put out in several parts of the national capital. Once President Putin touches down in Delhi, he will be traveling reportedly in the same car right up to the Prime Minister's residence. Amit Bharadwaj is joining us live from the Palam airport. Amit, take it away. Get us those updates.
Akshata, I'm bringing you the latest updates for our viewers right from the Palam Technical Airport. The security has been put on high alert at this moment in time. Traffic movement has been completely stopped, which gives us a signal that the Prime Minister could be reaching anytime to Palam Airport, and it also happens to be barely a few minutes from when President Putin will be touching down at Palam Airport. So everything is working in sync. This traffic on the other road has been completely stopped so that there is no possibility of any other movement, vehicular movement, and which is a clear indication that the Prime Minister could be actually reaching here at the Palam Technical Airport. Inside the airport, there is a preparation for a grand welcome of President Putin, and in most likelihood, the Guard of Honor could be also happening inside Palam Technical Airport when Prime Minister Modi will be himself, in most likelihood, receiving President Putin. And what we can certainly tell our viewers that security is on alert, giving an indication that the Prime Minister could reach here any time. The doors have been opened. The Palam Airport doors is open right now. This is the main gateway towards the Palam Airport, Technical Airport, and what we are expecting is that in the minute or two, there could be actually the vehicular movements, and the carcade pilot car, I believe, has crossed the Palam Airport area, and the carcades have started to enter. That's in the visual. The carcade of the VVIPs, most likelihood of Prime Minister Modi, is entering inside the Palam Technical Airport at this point in time. That could be the Prime Minister's carcade entering the Palam Airport, and that's in the visuals right now. President Putin to touch down in India, and minute before that, PM Modi has entered Palam Technical Airport. So the news that we broke on India today, that PM Modi in most likelihood is going to receive President Putin at the Palam Airport. That news, this particular visual that's on your screen, is confirmation of that news break on India today, and PM Modi has gone inside Palam Airport. So in few minutes from now, we will be seeing those visuals of bonhomie, of friendship, of a strong bond that India and Russia share, as well as that PM Modi and President Putin share. So these visuals is the confirmation that PM Modi himself is going to receive President Putin at Palam Airport right now. And in a few minutes from now, Akshata, will get those visuals as well. Possibly a repeat of what we saw.
We're standing by for those first pictures. Amit Bharadwaj reporting from the Palam Airport, getting us the first glimpse of the Prime Minister's convoy going into the Palam Airport. So like we told you here on India Today, Prime Minister Modi is chosen personally to be at the airport to welcome President Putin. After that, there's a possibility that in that very convoy that you saw Prime Minister Modi traveling in, President Putin will be accompanying him. That could be in the next 15 to 20 minutes. So we're going to stand by for those images as well. I'll bring in the rest of our reporters as we track the latest updates from the ground now. We've got Pranay Upadhyay from the Prime Minister's residence. We've got Shivani Sharma joining us from outside the ITC Moria in Delhi. That's where Putin will be staying. It's a very short visit in the sense he's going to be here for just over 24 hours, but a visit that's extremely crucial, loaded with messaging. Many would say to the West, but beyond that, also loaded with important messaging for India and Russia as well. So let's bring in all of our reporters on this broadcast. I'll bring in Shivani Sharma for a quick update, and Pranay Upadhyay as well. Pranay, to you first. Right after President Putin touches down and we see an exchange between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, it's straight over to 7 Lok Kalyan Marg for a dinner meet.
Absolutely, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will not only be receiving President Vladimir Putin, he's also hosting a private dinner for President Vladimir Putin. This is not for the first time he's hosting a private dinner. During his earlier visits also, Prime Minister Narendra Modi fondly received President Vladimir Putin, and he hosted a private dinner for him. And we have seen that, you know, in Sochi, when President Vladimir Putin hosted Prime Minister Modi, there has been a tradition of informal conversation between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi, and here also both the leaders will be taking forward that. Then this is a time for both these leaders to take without any protocol, without any the formal or official barriers or agenda, they can discuss a freewheeling conversation, and that is the thing which was also highlighted by President Vladimir Putin during India Today's interview. There he said that, you know, whenever we meet, we discuss a lot. We discuss about many things, about the geopolitics, about the domestic politics, about our own issues as well. So this is how we bond, and this is the 11th visit of President Vladimir Putin during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's term, and therefore you know that how long there has been an association. If you see the history of engagement between Prime Minister Modi and President Vladimir Putin.
Apologies for interrupting, but we're just going to cut into what's happening at the Palam airport, where you can see all the preps are underway right now. There's going to be a formal guard of honor, which is usually the protocol to welcome a head of state, to welcome President Putin in this particular case. So we're also standing by for the first image of Prime Minister Modi, because he will be waiting there. The moment the plane comes into the runway and stops there, Prime Minister Modi will be waiting at the foot of the stairs as President Putin deboards. And that image, that moment when the two leaders meet, will speak volumes really of the India-Russia friendship and their story. Dr. Mohan Kumar, former diplomat, is also with us on this broadcast. Dr. Kumar, what do you make of the symbolism behind Prime Minister Modi being there at the Palam airport to personally receive President Putin? I can say that none of us really are surprised by the fact that the Prime Minister has chosen to do that.
So thank you very much for having me. I think it shows two things. One, my own recollection of Prime Minister Modi when he was the first leader to come to Paris to receive Macron and to see Macron is that Prime Minister Modi takes a lot of effort to invest in the personal relationship and rapport that he establishes with foreign leaders. Secondly, he does not often come to the airport to receive foreign leaders or foreign presidents. So it is definitely an indication of the tremendous importance that he attaches to the relationship. I'll also have to say that geopolitically, Washington, China, and Europe, the capitals must all be watching this visit almost minute by minute. Geopolitical analysis of this visit, I think, will reach an all-time high. People will look at the body language, people will look at the substantive outcomes, and in the scheme of those things, the Prime Minister going personally to visit or to receive President Putin at a time when Russia is under pressure from the West has its own geopolitical signaling.
Very true. Gaurav, if I can bring you in on that as well. You know, in the interview that we will be airing at 9 p.m., we'll hear from President Putin himself on what really the messaging is to the West. And President Putin hasn't shied away from calling out the West on their hypocrisy, particularly on the attempts that they've made to kind of threaten India, arm twist India on the issue of oil.
He's called a spade a spade. India has done so very politely in the past. India has exposed America's double standards, and President Putin, in that exclusive interview to India today, when he spoke to Anjana Om Kashyap and Geeta Mohan, he said America continues to take uranium and oil from Russia. It continues to take fertilizers from Russia. America is taking a lot from Russia, but does not want India to do the same. So he did expose the double standards of the West, and he said conversations need to happen with America on this. India is, of course, doing that. India has exposed the double standards of the United States very clearly. It's a fine balance. India wants this relationship with Russia. India also wants the relationship with the United States of America, with France, very important. And the images that you see, that's the Prime Minister's cavalcade that's now moving in to Palam technical area. The Tri-Services Guard of Honor all set. The Prime Minister's cavalcade getting there is very clearly an indication that anytime now the President Putin's aircraft will be touching down and the Prime Minister then receives him. So that's a very, very big signal that India is sending out, not just to people in India and Russia, but to the West too.
Okay, let me bring in Dr. Datta as well, our foreign policy expert on this broadcast as we track the latest updates anytime now. We're standing by for the first picture of President Putin in Delhi. And a reminder again to all of our viewers that at 9 p.m. we have that big world exclusive coming up. We've been getting non-stop calls, messages asking us if President Putin has spoken on Trump, if President Putin has spoken on tariff, if President Putin has spoken on the Ukraine war. I can confirm to everyone that he's very much spoken on each of those issues. The timing of this particular visit by President Putin to India, Dr. Datta, is also extremely crucial. You know, just a few days ago, you had Witkoff in Russia, and there too, very clear messaging that was sent across from Putin.
Yes, absolutely. It is very significant, and it is not only significant, it is going to be a turning point in geopolitics and in strategic relationship at the international level. The car diplomacy of tonight would create in a lot of flutter and jitter in United States of America, as well as heartburns in Europe. Having said that, this visit is very significant, even though it is very short visit, but it is very, very, it is very tight with a lot of things happening. And my understanding is, like, first and foremost, the Relos agreement being ratified by the Duma, by the Russian parliament, that itself is a very significant thing, looking into the context of what is happening at Ukraine as well as in Russia and in Middle East and other parts of the world. Together with that, opening up of the North Arctic Ocean, which has become a very hot cake these days in relation to trade diplomacy and economic diplomacy because of the melting of the Arctic ice and India's entry into that, and Russia giving a free hand to India to, cruise into the waters of Arctic Ocean. That is again a clear message to the West. And of course, there would be discussions on S-500 as well as on Su-17 and, advancement of the Sukhoi aircraft and many other things which would be coming in the kitty, together with a huge agreement in relation to technology and also in relation to enhancement of our economic ties and our trade ties and our bilateral relationship. So this would definitely raise in a lot of eyebrows in United States of America, in Europe, and of course China would also be jittery.
Okay.
Last year itself, just 30 seconds more, last year itself, United States of America had traded to almost around 24,000 million US dollars in terms of trade with Russia on uranium as well as on critical minerals and on other important components, So when US does that, and then United States of America threatening Bharat not to go for it, that itself is a hypocrisy of the highest order. And I think this visit is actually going to give in a clear-cut direction as well as a proper messaging to United States of America to stay away as to with whom India should trade and with whom India should maintain a
as
relationship.
someone who's heard that full 100-minute interview, there is a conversation also where my colleagues Geeta and Anjana actually asked President Putin on what he really makes of what Trump is doing. And Sandeep, while Putin also doesn't shy away in that interview from calling out the threats of tariffs and the attempts to arm twist India, when asked particularly about Trump as a president, about Trump as a leader, there you see Putin take a very careful stance as well.
Well, not surprising, Akshita, because Russia and the United States are in the middle of a very, very sensitive point in their relations where the United States is trying to get the war in Ukraine to come to an end. But the problem is that you have Europe, which does not want the fighting to end on Russian or American terms. So that's a major problem. And it's, of course, understandable why President Putin would talk about it very carefully, because it is an extremely sensitive moment right now for Russia. Everyone wants to see the war in Europe end. It's only a matter of, on whose terms they're ending and whether this fighting can actually stop. Otherwise, the war, it possibly enters its fifth year in 2026. So it's a very important interview, Akshita, and this is going to be watched. This interview is one of the most significant interviews, that's been obtained by any Indian television channel. And at a moment like this in international relations, it's literally every single capital of consequence will be tuning in to see what President Putin has to say about not only the war in Europe, but also his ties with India and the other countries as well. So it's huge signaling, geopolitical signaling, from the Kremlin, from the Russian Federation, and of course from President Putin himself. And we can't wait to hear what he has to say. And I really envy the fact that you were one of the first to listen to that whole interview, Akshita. But it is going to be the most anticipated interview given by any foreign leader, and one that's been scooped by India today, Akshita.
I agree with you, Sandeep. I consider myself extremely lucky that I was able to catch that interview. All right. Images are on your screens right now. We apologize that it's completely dark, but what we're trying to show you is the moment of Prime Minister Modi there. getting out of his vehicle, getting set to welcome the Russian president. So any moment now you will watch out for images of Prime Minister Modi with Russian President Putin. Those are the first images on our screens. Hugely significant, Gaurav, that you have Prime Minister Modi there at the Palam airport, and very telling that he's chosen to be there personally to welcome President Putin. We were first hearing it's going to be Dr. S. Jaishankar. It looks like Prime Minister Modi said that, no, my good friend Putin, I will welcome him personally.
So this is the Palam technical area. This is where military aircraft and VVIP aircraft land. There is a small ops room and a briefing room. You know, when VVIPs come in, you know, they brief or debrief just before they board that flight. That's the room where the Prime Minister is now waiting. The moment there's touchdown, so the Prime Minister has arrived, the moment President Putin's plane touches down and then taxis to this zone at Palam technical area, the Prime Minister will receive him. He's done this with world leaders in the past, but very rarely, you know, in his tenure. So he's received Sheikh Hasina, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, the Emir of Qatar, and the President of France. And now it's President Putin. This just goes on to show the importance Prime Minister Narendra Modi attaches to, one, the relationship with the country, his personal relationship with the world leader, and with President Putin. It indeed is very close. He'd done that with Shinzo Abe, late Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan. They were very, very close as Chief Minister, when Prime Minister was Chief Minister of Gujarat. Incidentally, if I may, when Narendra Modi was Chief Minister of Gujarat, he had travelled in 2001 to Moscow, and then President Putin, according to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's team, he'd been very kind to engage with the Chief Minister of a state, you know, of Gujarat. And there was this, you know, two-state cooperation. So Astrakhan in Russia and Gujarat in India, they became partner states. So that cooperation from 2001, now you're seeing this phase in 2025.
I'm going to bring in Amit Bharadwaj, who's standing by from outside the Palam airport for those updates. Amit, can you confirm for us on whether Putin has touched down in Delhi?
Akshata, in any moment from now, because the craft had already was inside the Delhi NCR airspace, and that means that landing could be anytime soon. There has to be a confirmation signal as well coming in, and those visuals will be out very soon, where we will see Prime Minister Modi receiving President Putin out here at Palam airport, and that's going to be a very significant you know, a moment for India and Russia, both in terms of the old ties that we share, as well as the strengthening of those ties as we build the gateway for the future from here. And any time from now, we will be seeing those visuals of the touchdown also coming out, as well as Prime Minister Modi receiving President Putin at the Palam technical area. We can certainly tell our viewers at this point in time is that the craft was already in the Delhi NCR airspace, so the touchdown could be anytime soon at here at the Palam airport. And after that, we'll get those visuals, first visuals on our screen of President Putin and PM Modi. Back to you.
Okay, so I'm tracking right now. Since you raised the live tracker, Amit, I immediately opened it up on my phone. And I can confirm that right now, the plane hasn't touched down just yet, but very, very close to landing in the Palam airport. This is the flight number is RSD 369. It's part of the special flight squadron, obviously, because you've got President Putin traveling in that particular aircraft, but it's getting closer. I think in the next 15 to 20 minutes, we will be seeing the plane touching down at the Palam airport, which is why Prime Minister Modi is already ready, waiting to go ahead and receive President Putin at the Palam airport. From there, it's straight for dinner to the Prime Minister's residence at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. What I can also tell you at this point is the pictures that you will see of President Putin being received by Prime Minister Modi. I'll take this back to 2018, when you had President Putin actually going ahead and bidding farewell to Prime Minister Modi when he had visited Russia in 2018. So this is kind of, you know, a gesture that we've seen before between the two leaders. And it again, like I've repeated several times, speaks volumes really of not just the friendship between the two countries, but the personal friendship between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin. A quick update from Pranay Upadhyay, who's outside the Prime Minister's residence right now. Pranay, what's exactly on the agenda tonight? This is a very short visit. So it's a packed one where President Putin will be, of course, spending dinner, we understand, today with Prime Minister Modi. There's going to also be a meeting with President Murmu tomorrow.
Absolutely. The itinerary for President Vladimir Putin's visit is very packed, and a lot of items are there in it. But it starts with the personal bonding of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. You saw the visuals of 2018 when President Vladimir Putin came to airport to bid farewell to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So in a way, it's like taking forward from the last page. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached the Palam technical area. He would be receiving him. Both the leaders will be coming to the 7 LKM Lok Kalyan Marg, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be hosting a private dinner for President Putin, and that is the place where both the leaders will be having a direct conversation. And we have seen that how Prime Minister Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin have bonded, and they always try and find a way with which they can have a direct conversation. They can have an informal conversation. We have seen it in Tianjin. We have seen it in Sochi. We have seen it in Delhi as well. So tomorrow as well, there is going to be restricted talks, a direct talk between both the leaders, preceding the bilateral delegation level talks. But before that, here at LKM, both the leaders will be setting the agenda for the talks for the bilateral engagement. But besides that, there are many MOUs which are likely to take place, which were likely to be announced during this visit of President Vladimir Putin, which includes the areas include health sector, areas into fertilizer. You have heard President Vladimir Putin mentioning about how concerned Prime Minister Narendra Modi is regarding the fertilizer supply to India, and he has assured help. He mentioned this during our exclusive interview that he remained concerned about the fertilizer supply, and Russia stands by India as far as the fertilizer needs are concerned. So besides that, in the areas of defense, strategic affairs, nuclear sector, space, many areas are there which are part of
he's touched upon all of this in that interview as well. Yes, we're standing by for President Putin to touch down in Delhi. But again, a reminder to all of our viewers, 9 p.m. we will be playing out that full 100-minute interview with President Putin, where there are several of these aspects of cooperation cutting across different sectors also raised and spoken of in great detail by President Putin, because he kind of also outlines for, in fact, people of India and Russia of how he sees this friendship moving forward. General Dhillon, as we continue to keep our focus on these images, and we're standing by for President Putin to touch down, perhaps do a namaste to the people of India as he reaches Delhi. You, of course, have said that you will be watching out for that interview. What will you be most curious to hear about from President Putin, General Dhillon?
As we said, and as some fellow panelists also said, the world is watching this visit. World is wanting to know what transpires. And this 100-minute interview, which India today has been able to manage with the President Putin, is a sort of a curtain raiser. It is going to say, or it is going to tell everyone what is in store tomorrow. So everyone's interest is to know firsthand and at the first instance as to what this visit is all about. What is in the mind of President Putin? That is very important because, like you only said, he's a very enigmatic leader. So this interview is going to lay out for everyone to understand how he is looking at this visit. And 100 minutes, mind you, it's a long, long interview. So I am very sure, at least I am very keen to listen to this interview at 9 o'clock. And like most of us have discussed, India-Russia relationship is not a spontaneous or a transitory relationship. It is embedded in history. So there is a lot, starting from defense to space to AI to technology to trade, what have you.
Okay, General Dhillon, we'll stay with, in fact, the latest updates that are coming in. The confirmation is here that President Putin has now touched down in Delhi. He's landed in the Palam airport. I'll bring in Amit quickly for that update. Amit, the confirmation that President Putin has touched down in Delhi. So anytime now he'll be disembarking, deboarding his aircraft to a personal welcome from Prime Minister Modi.
Absolutely right, Akshata. We did say that the craft is already in Delhi NCR airspace some time back, and it was all about a couple of minutes, and we could see that special squadron of the Russian, fleet actually entering the NCR airspace and eventually landing on the Palam Technical Airport runway. So it's standing on the runway anytime from now. After the SOPs are done with, we will see the disembarkment process to begin, and after that we will see the first visual of Russian President Putin on the Indian soil in Delhi, in the national capital, and he will be received by none other than his friend Prime Minister Modi out here in Delhi. So those visuals will be also a repeat of sorts of visuals what we saw 3 months back during the SCO summit. So all of us are waiting for the first visuals to come out of President Putin to be out here on the Indian soil in Delhi, meeting Prime Minister Modi, and also showing the visual to the world of further strengthening ties between India and Russia. What is also to be marked is that the temperature has dipped in the national capital, so possibly favorable also climatic conditions for him as far as the temperature conditions are concerned. So PM Modi's carcade had already entered. We had seen those visuals of his cavalcade entering the Palam airport. He was waiting for nearly 10 to 15 minutes, almost for him to personally receive it. As Pranay was also mentioning, it's sort of a departure from the set protocols as well. PM Modi wants to put a very special moment out there for President Putin as well. And we can certainly say by tracking the special craft of the President Putin, the Russian craft that landed here at the Palam airport, the descent had started a couple of minutes back itself. It went through the runway and stopped on the runway, so which means that we will very soon be getting those visuals of disembarkment process as well, deboarding process as well, and then the visuals of President Putin on the Indian soil will be in front of us as well as Prime Minister Modi receiving him here in the national capital, Delhi. Back to you.
My colleague Amit Bhardwaj getting us the latest coming in from Palam. The latest is that President Putin has touched down in India, Delhi, in an aircraft which is popularly called the Flying Kremlin. I want to bring in Sandeep Unathan, who was just breaking it down for me earlier. But Sandeep, President Putin is in the national capital. His 30-hour visit begins right from now. And Air Force One-like aircraft called the Flying Kremlin, correct?
Absolutely, Preeti. It's one of only 5 such aircraft that exist in the world. It is Russia's equivalent of the US Air Force One. It's called a Flying Kremlin precisely for the reason that it is an airborne command post as well. That's what the Russian designation for it is. It's flown by special pilots. They're some of the best Russian Air Force pilots. It has everything that the president would need. It's got encrypted communications. It's got self-protection suites. It is an IL-96 passenger liner. It's a 4-engine aircraft. It's a wide-body jet. There are 2 symbols of state when President Putin travels abroad. One is the IL-96 wide-body jet, the Flying Kremlin, and the other is his personal limousine, the Aurus Senat, and both of these are entirely made in Russia. If you can say it's Atmanirbhar Russia, it's entirely made end-to-end, and these are basically the 2 symbols of Russian power, and this has been introduced in President Putin's term, and he's had been president for over 2 decades now. So it is a flying fortress, this aircraft. I mean, it's got everything that he would need. Like I mentioned, encrypted communications. He's in constant touch with the ground control. He has the ability to even conduct military operations from when he is airborne. So that is the kind of secure communications that this aircraft has. It is, like I said, it's one of just 5 such aircraft. And when they fly, Preeti, it's interesting that there are decoy aircraft as well, because I was just reading a report which said that Flight Radar just tweeted out saying that this is the most tracked aircraft flight in the world today. Everybody is literally tracking that on Flight Radar on near real time since the time it took off from Moscow and made that 6-hour flight across Eurasia towards New Delhi. And that aircraft, we don't know how many are there. But it's clearly, given the past history of how he travels, his travel is, it's closely guarded. He uses decoys.
Sandeep,
two aircraft as well. We see
there you see it on your television screen. Go ahead, Sandeep. Go ahead.
The Flying Kremlin, it's a beautiful aircraft. It's all white, and you see the Russian livery, the Russian flag, the blue, red, and white, painted all across the aircraft. And that is one of the most magnificent Russian passenger aircraft, and that is the Flying Kremlin. And possibly I'm not sure what the conversation is, but the Russian conversation would be the equivalent of the Kremlin has landed, Preeti.
Well, the Kremlin has indeed landed, as Sandeep was pointing out, the aircraft called the Flying Kremlin. What we also are getting in are visuals of the Prime Minister who would be personally receiving President Putin. What we've been given to understand, what we're also looking at is a possible SCO moment once again. Will that happen is the big question. Will the Prime Minister of India and President Putin travel together, away after Prime Minister Modi receives President Putin at Palam airport? But these visuals coming in, sadly, it is a strangely foggy evening, smoggy evening rather, where Delhi is concerned. President Putin is starting now his 30-hour visit. We're going to take you through his itinerary. Amit Bhardwaj, my colleague, is joining us from Palam airport, where President Putin has landed, who all are traveling with him. We're going to try and give you details. It's a very, very important visit. Sandeep was also pointing out, where the most tracked plane is the Flying Kremlin, possibly adding to what we were speaking of earlier, the aura of mystery or the palace intrigue that surrounds President Putin. But if some amount of that palace intrigue will be neutralized today at about 9 p.m., exact sharp 9 p.m. India time, where we have that super global exclusive with President Putin, where India Today Group has landed that interview, a 90-minute interview, truly a global exclusive, agenda-setting exclusive there, will make headlines across the world, and everybody waiting for that interview at 9 p.m. These visuals coming in of the Flying Kremlin landing in the national capital at the Palam airport. Gaurav Sawant, my colleague, co-anchoring with me, joining us as well. Gaurav, in all probability, we might have that another SCO moment in the making, where the Prime Minister and the President of Russia are traveling together in the same car.
Well, Tianjin was when they traveled together, and once again they're likely to travel together to 7 Lok Kalyan Marg for dinner. The Prime Minister doesn't frequently come to the airport to receive a guest. He's done that in the past for President Donald Trump, for President Barack Obama. He's done that for Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, late Shinzo Abe of Japan. He's done that for Sheikh Hasina. He's done that for the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi twice. He's done that for Emmanuel Macron, and now he's doing it for President Putin. And this shows how close the bond between India and Russia as countries, and between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Putin as two individuals is. I was reporting not just from Tianjin, but also from Moscow. And the Prime Minister was supposed to spend a couple of hours at the presidential retreat. And that conversation lasted over 5 hours. And that just goes on to show how close the two were. Their conversations, in that at another official conversation, the Russian president said, I don't need an interpreter. It's from the heart. We understand each other. So that's the kind of bond Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Putin share, which you shall watch in perhaps a moment from now as the Flying Kremlin comes to a stop at the tarmac at the Palam technical area in Delhi. When he comes down, there'll be that warm hug, the Tri-Services Guard of Honor, and that is for a head of state. So there's a state visit, there's a Tri-Services Guard of Honor, Army, Navy, and Air Force, and after that, the hug, and then, of course, they travel perhaps together to 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, Preeti.
With all eyes on that, but from here on, of course, he's going to go to 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, where the Prime Minister is going to be hosting him for dinner. But kid you not, as Gaurav was also saying, there is an element here which is of the bonhomie, the friendship and the warmth that the Prime Minister of India and the President of Russia enjoy. But there is also the historical context to it all. Russia has been one country which has always stood besides India. There is a deep-rooted historical context, a relationship which has evolved over the years in terms of changing times where the geopolitics of that time is concerned, and both countries have evolved. A lot, of course, lies as well on what we can expect in that bilateral, which will be held tomorrow afternoon, and what comes out of that. All eyes peeled and on that as well. My colleague Shivani joining me, someone who tracks defense very closely. Defense is something where Russia and India have. She's joining us from the Moria Hotel. That is where President Putin would be staying in his visit in India. But Shivani, a lot has been spoken of, a lot is being anticipated where defense deals is concerned between India and Russia, amongst trade. All eyes on that as well, because there is a certain amount of pulls and tugs of it where we're talking about international pressure. There will be consequences of the deals that we make for Russia, internationally speaking. Trade, is going to be a big point of concern, especially because we'll be hosting, the American delegation when it comes down to tariffs. We're facing one of the worst tariffs to about 50%. That could come down to 15%. But even now, America watching very closely on what really transpires in this 30-hour visit and that joint statement that will be issued after the bilateral. For the benefit of our viewers, Shivani, you have President Putin, who has landed any minute now. We'll see him come out and be received by the Prime Minister of India. So all eyes there. But take us through the itinerary of President Putin over the next 30 hours, Shivani.
This is a moment, or a historic moment, in fact, where the Prime Minister has taken a departure from the protocol, and he's already there at the airport to welcome his friend, more than a state head. And this a two-day visit by President Putin happens to be very important. The whole world is having a watch on this because India has shown the world that what bonhomie and what a personal bond between the leaders is. Despite a lot of pressure, a lot of statements, criticism after the Russia-Ukraine war, India and Russia have maintained their diplomatic, strategic, historic ties. And that's what we are seeing. Tianjin pictures were another strong message. And today what Prime Minister Modi has done by reaching the airport, and shortly he'll be receiving President Putin, that will be another strong message. So if we talk about the itinerary, today is a private dinner hosted by Prime Minister Narendra Modi at 7 LKM, though the brief halt can be at the ITC Moria, where I am present right now. It lies between the airport and 7 LKM. Tomorrow in the morning at 11, a grand tri-services welcome, a ceremonial welcome is planned at the Rashtrapati Bhavan, where he will be meeting the president, and then the bilateral will take place at the Hyderabad House, and later in the evening once again a grand dinner for President Putin and the delegation will happen at Rashtrapati Bhavan, and between that there will be the Indo-Russia summit that will take place at Bharat Mandapam. So a lot of engagements, certain private engagements, inaugurations also that have to be done by President Putin, but certainly this is going to be a very important visit. I'm right now here, and any moment now when President Putin comes out of his aircraft IL-96, which is also known as Flying Kremlin, so he will be heading towards this particular area where the security arrangements are at place. Movements remain restricted. Traffic is not being allowed after beyond a certain point. So all VIP arrangements are there. Delhi has already turned into a fortress with all the security layers, the multi-layer security that is there at place. So when President Putin is here, we also know that the defense ministers of India and Russia are holding talks, and a lot is there when it comes to defense on the agenda. S-400 procurement, S-500 that has been offered, the technology transfer offer for Su-57 by the Russians, and bilateral ties, the exercises that India and Russia hold, the exchange, the reciprocal exchange of logistic support that has been agreed upon by the Duma, and what will be the impact on that. All those discussions are happening. So certainly a very important, a very packed visit by Russian President and the Defense Minister, and also all the delegates who are already here in the national capital.
Important, packed, historic. You can roll all of that into one. We were speaking, like I said, there is a sense of aura, mystery that is surrounded President Putin, a fair amount of palace intrigue. But India Today group had been chosen, for an interview that the top line networks had been vying for, the BBCs and the CNNs of the world, and India Today had landed that interview. President Putin, in a no-hold-barred, agenda-setting interview, has spoken to India Today back at the Kremlin, not the flying Kremlin, but at the Kremlin. Gave a detailed 90-minute interview, and that will air at 9 p.m. Mind you, the depth of that interview will lead to international headlines as well. This is not just from the perspective of India and the South Asia Pacific, but on a global level. This will definitely, of what I know, and I can give you an excerpt in that. President Putin has spoken about President Trump. He's spoken about the war in Ukraine. It's his first visit after the war in Ukraine. All right, so Sandeep and Gaurav, would you both want to come in? That door of the flying Kremlin now open any moment from now. You'll have President Putin walk down, Prime Minister.
It'll happen in seconds. It'll just happen in seconds.
Right.
It's for the captain of the ship, the pilot. He'll step out. He'll give an all clear. The security detail has just done so. The red carpet has been rolled out. And in just a moment from now, the moment the captain of the aircraft gives a go-ahead, President Putin will come out. And the way he does, the ex-KGB colonel that he was, he's though 73 years old, extremely fit, keeps his right arm very close. Usually, when they carry a weapon underslung the shoulder, that's the time the right arm doesn't move much. It's the left arm that moves more. And then he usually, comes down the stairs very quickly. The Tri-Services Guard of Honor, he'll meet the Prime Minister, and then they travel together. So just moments from now, there's a security check that's done. That it's all clear. There are soldiers on top and on ground who give that all clear. They've checked the railing is firm, nothing is shaking, the red carpet has been rolled out, it's all clear, and only then the president steps out.
Well, it's all clear, and the president going to step out any moment from now. Sandeep, in politics, especially also in diplomacy, optics tantamount to so much. Are we going to expect, the former KGB President Putin come down formally? Are we expecting a namaste? Because that in itself will be tomorrow's, the money shot for the evening, possibly. So a lot lies in optics. That sheer fact that in all probability there will be a moment number 2, like the one at which Gaurav was pointing out at the SEO summit, where you will have the Prime Minister and the President both travel together onwards to Lok Kalyan Marg.
Well, absolutely, Preeti. And, it's just moments from now that we're going to see that moment that we've been waiting literally all day, if not all month. And it is going to be very warm. We've seen both Prime Minister Modi and President Putin. They have a warmth that is missing from every other relationship. It's not just the India-Russia relationship, it's also the personal chemistry that these two leaders share. And as President Putin was telling Anjana and Geeta, the fact that it was an unscripted moment at the SEO summit in Tianjin, where they just decided to hop into the same car, just like two friends would. And this is exactly the kind of chemistry both of them share. They have an extremely warm chemistry. They've known each other for more than 2 decades now. And when you know each other for so long, there's a sense of comfort, there's a sense of, there's a sense of personal connect that you have. And it is so important for, relationships as critical as this, the India-Russia relationship that was historically, that you saw with the former Soviet Union, and that has miraculously continued into the 21st century with the Russian Federation. So just moments from now, you're going to see possibly one of the biggest photo events of 2025 unfold before our eyes, Preeti.
Which frankly will make headlines across the world. True. Because the world wants to know what Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Putin will talk, and whether it will lead to peace, whether it will lead to a ceasefire in Ukraine. Remember, initially, there was a lot of pressure on India to criticize Russia. Now the pressure on India is to talk to Russia to ensure that there is a ceasefire. And that kind of indicates, Preeti, that even the West has realized that these are independent thinking countries. They keep their national interests supreme. The West cannot talk down to them. And there is some kind of a realignment of that opinion. By the way, President Putin has a huge business delegation that's traveling with him. The health minister of Russia has just met the health minister of India. The defense minister of Russia has just met the defense minister of India. So at various levels, this cooperation is on. The effort is to ensure that business to business cooperation, more access for Indian pharmaceuticals to Russian markets, more access to Indian agriculture to Russian markets. All of this is also on the agenda in these talks.
And that's going to happen because tomorrow after, the bilateral, the joint statement, you also have a meeting where the business heads of both countries would also be meeting at the Bharat Mandapam. So that's all on the card and the itinerary. But the enormity of this visit cannot, be mistaken because viewers, this, of course, the interview at 9 p.m. Also is an agenda-setting interview that will lead to international headlines. But this visit comes in, the first visit to India after the Ukraine war. It is a tightrope walk where India is concerned, where diplomacy is concerned on multiple facets. Both Russia need to be happy. There will be consequences on the optics and the messaging of it that goes, especially where the United States is concerned. We have a delegation coming in the next 1 month where trade will be on the talking table. Right now, India is facing sanctions up to 50%. Will that be brought down to 15%? Will that depend on what really happens in the bilateral tomorrow? We also have with us our consulting editor, Rajdeep Sardesai. Rajdeep, while we wait for President Putin to walk down and be greeted by the Prime Minister of India, your 2 cents on the importance and the enormity of this visit. Of course, we're going to play our world exclusive at 9 p.m. this evening. So for those of you who don't watch Rajdeep, can watch President Putin at 9 p.m.
Well, I think the global context in which he's coming to India makes this different to yet another Indo-Russia summit. The fact that this comes against the backdrop of all that's happened in Ukraine, the fact that it comes against the backdrop of what America under Trump has done to India, to impose 25% additional penalties on India because of our oil purchases with Russia, because it comes against the backdrop of India trying to rediscover some kind of relationship with China in this new polycentric world order. It comes against the backdrop of what we saw happening earlier this year in Operation Sindoor. It also comes to my mind also at a time when, let's be honest, President Putin is a pariah for the Western world. So in all these contexts, the fact that India is here carrying on a relationship with an all-weather friend is important because it's taking place in a world that's churning all the time. So for President Putin and Prime Minister Modi, this visit becomes is significant. We've seen what's happened at BRICS, SCO, the attempt to forge new regional alliances in a way to almost fill up the vacuum that exists because we never know with Donald Trump what America really wants. So an erratic America makes Russia some kind of a shield for India. An expansionist China makes Russia a country that we would like to have firmly on our side. Right. The fact that you've got a Pakistan
Rajdeep,
run by...
May I just, you can come in and reflect. You have President Putin, he's 73, very, very fit, practically running down the stairs there. He will be greeted by the Prime Minister there, who is waiting for him. What kind of greeting will that be? Will it be a namaste? Will it be a firm handshake? Will there be a hug? Optics are everything, where diplomacy comes into question. A gentle smile, and it is a handshake and a warm hug. So that is possibly, Gaurav, the money shot for the morning tomorrow newspapers, that hug enjoyed by the Prime Minister and President Putin. A firm handshake and a quick hug, and then, of course, that photo opportunity. In all probability, they will be escorted to one car, and that is the second moment where the Prime Minister of India and the President of Russia would be traveling together en route to Kalyan.
So that's the Air Officer commanding Palam Technical Air Base, Palam Air Base, who's greeted the Russian President, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, introducing the Russian President to his entire team. That also includes Russian diplomats and Indian diplomats who are a part of this team. It's a big delegation that the Russian president is also carrying. Then, of course, the Tri-Services Guard of Honor. You're absolutely right that hug is the money shot for now, but there will be multiple hugs between now and the 9 p.m. tomorrow. The traditional Indian dance to welcome the Russian president. He will enjoy the music. Perhaps there's some music in that. We'll know in a moment from now. And if I may, President Putin is maybe a pariah for some in Europe. He just went to Alaska on the invitation of the American President Donald Trump. And President Donald Trump just sent a team to meet him in Moscow at the Kremlin. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff just met him. They're trying to find a solution.
All right, so there is a fair bit of music, and you have President Trump who took that 10 seconds to acknowledge that little dance sequence that you see for President Trump. And understandably, this is the full red carpet, the protocol meted out to a head of state, and that's exactly what we're witnessing on our television screen. Multiple layers to this visit, very, very important. And for now, that will be the money shot for tomorrow morning's newspapers, where you have President Trump hugging the Indian Prime Minister. But Sandeep and Rajdeep, I'm going to bring you back in, and Gaurav as well. Sandeep, with what we were speaking of earlier, there is, all right, so it does seem both of them will be traveling in the same car. You have Prime Minister Modi as well as President Trump.
President Putin.
President Putin, sorry, driving alongside all the way to Lok Kalyan Marg. So this is what we were expecting, and that's what's happened. And that question was raised in that super exclusive global interview that we've had with President Putin at the Kremlin in Moscow about the SCO moment where they were traveling together. And he went ahead and said that it wasn't scripted, but he wanted it to happen. He's the one who engineered it at that point of time. So that's a bit of a tidbit from that interview.
And this is the Prime Minister's car. This is the Indian car that they're traveling in. And, look at the officials who are all taking selfies, and his team. Everyone wants a selfie of that moment. The Russian flag and the Indian flag on the Prime Minister's official Jeep. They're traveling in that SUV together to 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, where there's a private dinner in honor of the Russian president. And then they take this relationship forward. So these are signals not just to people in both their respective countries, Preeti, but also to the world. Ye dosti hum nahi todenge. That's that big message that goes out.
Well, that's the big message that goes out, and one mustn't forget that Russia has been, over decades, a long-standing partner of India. There's a historical context to it. It's a relationship that has evolved, especially in the times of multipolarity and the current global order. Another question, that he was asked, and Rajdeep and Sandeep, I'll bring you in, and Rajdeep, if you'd want to take that, interesting question that was raised, by us to President Putin on the multipolarity and a new global order that could be setting in. That's one answer everybody will stay tuned to at this point of time, with possibly Russia, China, and the axis coming together where these countries are concerned.
Look at, I was speaking to a European diplomat. Look at it from the European point of view. They've said, we see the pictures of Prime Minister Modi, President Putin, and the Chinese President Xi together, and we have our own views on it. But from our perspective and from our strategic objectives, that becomes important. We need to be seen in the present atmosphere as a country that has been able to navigate a very delicate balancing act between the United States, with whom there are trade negotiations going on, even as this visit is going on. The trade negotiators, I'm told, are coming to India next Thursday. So you've got trade negotiators coming next Thursday, and you've got Mr. Putin, who's also got his own agenda that also goes to trade and defense. So for India, the challenge is to balance the two without falling off the rope.
Rajdeep, coming right back to you. I just want to cut across to Amit Bhardwaj. He has some visuals coming in right now. Over to you, Amit.
Well, the visuals that we were waiting for, these visuals are coming straight from the Palam Technical Airport, and the first vehicle that's going to be out from here will be part of the Prime Minister Modi's carcade, and from here on, PM Modi is taking his friend President Putin to 7 LKM in most likelihood, where the dinner will be also hosted. The gates of the Palam airport is open, and the first car, the pilot car, is out. And after that, the security car kids would be coming out. So those visuals are on your screen. This is Prime Minister Modi's carcade, and in the white car, which you will see in any moment from now, is Prime Minister Modi and President Putin in that particular car. So as we were talking about the repeat of the SCO visuals, possibility of repeat of the SCO visuals, that's happening right now on your screens, and Prime Minister Modi's car is leaving right now the Palam airport. These are visuals on your screen where PM Modi along with President Putin is leaving from the Palam airport, and that's the car of Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's white car is out. PM Modi and President Putin are out of the Palam airport. So the visuals that we were waiting for, the repeat of the SEO summit, those visuals came from the Palam airport tarmac, where, I beg your pardon, PM Modi hugged President Putin, and after that, both of them boarded the same car, PM Modi's car, the white car that we were showing to our viewers at this point in time from Palam airport. That was Prime Minister Modi's car. So you had the pilot cars and the security car kit. And after that, PM Modi, along with President Putin, in the same car. So a repeat of the SCO moment here in India. And these visuals are certainly going to be recorded in the history as the symbol of strong bond and bonhomie that India and Russia share, and how we are going to strengthen it from here on. The trade between India and Russia has increased many folds in the past 4 to 5 years. There's a focus on the defense sector that Russia would also want, India to increase the deal upon, and India also looking at better negotiations. And the carcade of the Indian officials, the MEA was here, S. Jaishankar, other officials from the Russian embassy, the Russian defense attaché, all of them are leaving the Palam airport, and they would be, heading towards ITC Moria is the place where President Putin is leaving, will be staying here. And PM Modi is all set to host a very private dinner for President Putin at 7 LKM. So the visuals from the Palam airport, whatever we expected and told our viewers, were actually at play at Palam airport. You have
you are correct, Amit. You are correct.
Aircraft,
all right, let's cut across to Pranay for a brief while. My colleague who's joining us from Lok Kalyan Marg. Pranay, it does seem that the motorcade of the Prime Minister, and it's a repeat deja vu moment like the SCO summit, where you have the Prime Minister ride alongside President Putin to Lok Kalyan Marg. Can you give us what the next 30 hours for President Putin will look like, and what will be on the table for discussion? Of course, we're talking about trade, we're talking about defense, we're talking about, labor pact. So a lot there, but give us a sense of what to expect.
First of all, the full spread of food will be on spread for President Vladimir Putin, because Prime Minister.
So you talk about food and we'll bring everybody in. On a lighter note, Pranay, on a lighter note, will President Putin actually partake? Because like I said, with this whole palace intrigue and mystery and that aura around him, does he actually, will he eat the food that has been laid out, for the president, or will it be what he's brought with him? So, what is the official communique on that front?
Certainly, because we really don't know, Preeti, what will be what will be his dinner, how he will be taking his dinner here at 7 LKM. But see the venue, see the setting. If Prime Minister Narendra Modi has gone there at Palam technical area to receive him, if he's traveling along with President Vladimir Putin, if they are in the same motorcade, and if they are coming to the same place, they will be having dinner together. So definitely, this is the kind of message of a mutual bond. This is a mutual respect, and this is about the mutual confidence on each other. And that is why President Vladimir Putin, who's known and whose security establishment is known for, checking everything, and they do not take any risk because the threat to his life is way high. But still, they trust friend, and India is a friend. And there is a special arrangement, if I can ask my camera person to zoom a bit so that you can take a glimpse of certain lighting. There is a special lighting in Prime Minister's residence, 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. and this is specially lit for the for welcoming President Vladimir Putin here at Lok Kalyan Marg. And if as far as the next 30 hours are concerned, President Vladimir Putin will be hosted here for the private dinner, but thereafter, his main day would be tomorrow. He will be ceremonially received at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Tri-Service Guard of Honor will be given to President Vladimir Putin. Thereafter, as part of the state visit, he will go to Rajghat, and thereafter, the bilateral talks will take place in Hyderabad House. Both the leaders their meeting has already started, but they will have different phases: in-car meeting, on-dinner meeting. Thereafter, they will be having a restricted talk between both the leaders at Hyderabad House. Thereafter, there will be a delegation level talks, and then both the leaders will come before the media cameras. They will be giving out media statement. They will be announcing that what is their vision to take forward India and Russia partnership for next decade. What are the areas where India and Russia want to expand their partnership? This visit is very important, Preeti, because 7 cabinet ministers of the Russian cabinet are traveling with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Besides that, India-Russia Business Forum will be addressed by both these leaders, and that is a very important, a very significant meeting, because India and Russia are trying to expand their bilateral trade, and the target, which is of $100 billion by 2030. So like within 5 years, we have to achieve that target. How that can be done, that is the main area of focus for India and Russia and both the leaders to take care of.
Right. So fair amount of one-on-one time, like Pranay pointed out, the Prime Minister will spend with President Putin. But Rajdeep, Sandeep and Gaurav, to bring you in, Rajdeep, the point that you were finishing earlier, it is, as historic it might be, it's multifaceted, multi-layer in the current geopolitical context. Just about a week ago, we had European envoys who did, in fact, write a critical piece on India inviting President Putin. They were, of course, the MEA did say that was unacceptable. And now there seems to be a change of, at least tune where the European envoys and European nations are concerned that maybe because India is close to President Putin, that we try and build that kind of pressure on Russia to possibly, move towards peace.
It's very interesting. Something happened which I haven't seen in many years. Probably it never happened unprecedentedly. 3 ambassadors, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, wrote an editorial piece on Monday where they claim to have targeted Putin. They say we had nothing. It wasn't about India. It was about Russia. One day later, the Russian ambassador hit back and spoke about European betrayals. Now, I haven't seen when you have a diplomatic war being fought in the Indian media in this manner. So clearly, look, let's be honest. Mr. Putin is a divisive figure. Gaurav says he's not a pariah. The fact, though, is that several countries continue now to have embargoes, and the United States itself, it's the hypocrisy of the United States. Why have they, if he's not a pariah, imposed 25% penalties on us for doing our dealings with Russia? But large parts of the world continue to do it without the same impact. Certainly, China hasn't had the same impact. So there are a lot of double standards and hypocrisies there. But the truth of the matter is, Vladimir Putin is seen, after Ukraine, as someone who splits the world. You can see him as a strong nationalist defending his country's interests, or you can see him as little more than, even the ICC seems to suggest, someone who's been accused of serious war crimes and someone who's invaded the territorial integrity and sovereignty of another country. So it just depends who you talk to. And India, I think, has in its own way managed to achieve some kind of a balance between the two sides. At a time when the world is polarized, India plays the kind of balancing role. So you'll probably see President Putin and Prime Minister Modi here today. Who knows, 3 months down the line, if there's a successful trade deal, you'll see Donald Trump coming and being coming to India. So India is the place to be.
So European Union anyway will be coming to India once again, and Europeans are very keen
for 26 January, Gaurav, as our guest on Republic Day.
Absolutely, on Republic Day. Now, this is what shows you India's power, India's growing stature in the world, and India not letting the West talk down to India, Rajdeep. That's the change that's coming now in India. We're not letting the West decide what's important for us or what we should do. Initially, they did try. India should criticize Russia. Why should we criticize Russia? It's for, Russia to decide what's in Russia's national interest, and it's for India to decide what's in India's national interest. So that's exactly what is happening. And now the West is coming around to what India can actually do play a big role in ensuring that there is peace. India is the only country, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Rajdeep, I reported both, Rajdeep and Preeti, I reported when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Moscow, and then when Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to Kiev, and then when he went to Kazan once again. Only country that can talk to all sides and hope that there is a solution, and hopefully there will be forward movement towards peace. Now, what Russia is now saying, what America is doing is wrong. It's blatant American double standards that they are taking, Russian fuel, they're taking fertilizers, but they're imposing penalties on India. So it's American double standards. Why should we be penalized for it? Or why should we say, just because Europe is not talking to Putin, it doesn't mean he's a pariah. It's their fight. We are not involved in that fight.
Sandeep, would you want to come in? Because this is, whichever way one looks at it, it's a tightrope walk where India is concerned because of the optics of it, and there will be ramifications and consequences of the optics and what happens tomorrow. With what Rajdeep also touched on, with what we've been speaking on, we will have the trade delegation from America come in the next 2 weeks. Hopefully, we are looking at, the tariffs coming down from a 50% to a 15%, but all of that could very well be contingent on what our, deal with Russia is, where oil is concerned, where trade is concerned, importantly, where defense is concerned.
Absolutely, Preeti. And India is the only major country in the world that has logistics support agreements with both the Russian Federation and with the United States. We signed the logistics support agreement with the United States in 2016, and just a few hours back, in fact, the Russian Duma has approved the logistics support agreement with India. And this actually is, in a microcosm, what India's policy is all about. We tread the middle line. We pursue our national interests. For us, a relationship with the Russian Federation is as important as the relationship with the United States. And we are prepared to see both of these relationships independent of each other. And we would not want to be dragged into what the Europeans think, or what they feel, or they want us to do their bidding. That's not going to happen. India has always pursued a middle path, and it will continue to do so. And we are going to see evidence of that in the next couple of weeks. We will pursue this line with the Russian Federation, with President Putin, because Russia brings a lot of things to the table when it comes to whether it's energy security, whether it is military, cutting-edge military technology. Russia gives us...
The only country, Sandeep, that actually shares cutting-edge military technology with us, because everybody else is giving us old weaponry.
No,
absolutely.
France.
Preeti, the BrahMos missile would not have come into India's inventory but for President Putin. And I've heard this from the people who have made the BrahMos missile program happen. Dr. Shivtanu Pillai has told me that but for President Putin's personal intervention, we would not have got the BrahMos missile. It's an extremely political missile.
S-400 as well, Sandeep.
But for Operation Sindoor, we would, but for that BrahMos missile, the Operation Sindoor would not have been the success that the BrahMos missile, that the BrahMos missile had performed the way it did. And the S-400 missile, Preeti, that's another example of a political missile that was steered by this government. Prime Minister Modi pushed for that despite US sanctions. So these are the two war-winning tools that were given to us by Russia, and that's the reason that we value Russia's partnership so enormously. Nuclear-powered attack submarines, they've helped us with our ballistic missile submarine program. These are kind of, collaborations with no country in the world will give us. The Americans will not even let us come anywhere near any of their nuclear submarines. What to talk of leasing one or even getting technology to build one. So that's why the Russian-Indian relationship, this partnership, this extraordinary strategic partnership is so important. It's so valuable for us, because it protects certain core interests that both countries have laid way back in the time of the former Soviet Union, and that continues in the time of the Russian Federation.
You're right there, and it's a relationship, Sandeep, that has weathered many decades. And the reason why it's weathered and evolved is it's constantly changed, and especially in the current context of multipolarity and the geopolitics of it all. It is, a trapeze act. It's a tightrope walk. It's not easy in terms of diplomacy, and let's hope we find and we continue, which we are on a path of finding, treading the same path. All right, I believe, we're getting an information that the motorcade is now pulling into Lok Kalyan Marg. My colleague Pranay is joining us from there. Pranay, the last time around you were giving us a sense of what is possibly on the menu. Before we come to you, and I'll cut across, Pranay, just give us a moment coming to you. The minute the cavalcade comes in, the motorcade pulls in, just give us a heads up. But taking one quick comment from everyone, Rajdeep, Gaurav, Sandeep, Rajdeep, to pull you in. For a moment, let's just step back. Yes, it's a historic visit, very important. We've got the best coverage, but we also have the biggest coup, if I can say journalistically. We've got the president of Russia speaking to us for 90 minutes, even before the flying Kremlin touched the tarmac in the national capital, Delhi.
That's right. And I think the last time he spoke to an Indian news channel was way back in 2002. So it's over 2 decades. He's a man of who doesn't let his inner thoughts out too readily. So to have him speak so extensively certainly gives you an opportunity to get into the mind of the Russian president. And as we've seen in recent years, you can like him, hate him, you can't ignore Vladimir Putin. He remains a significant figure on the global stage. I think it's interesting in that interview, for example, where he's asked about G7. And he makes it very clear, I'm not interested in these global bodies. I'm happy to be out. Points suggest that Europe is in recession. Europe should be the one worried about its economic future and not Russia. Now, to some extent, that might be grandstanding, but the truth of the matter is Russia has shown that over the years, it's weathered many a storm. We can have our own views on whether the attack on Ukraine was justified or not. My own view is that Russia has much to answer for. But the fact is, at the end of the day, from an Indian perspective, Russia has been an important all-weather friend. There's no doubt about it. My only concern is Russia over the years, as a result of what the United States is doing at the moment, has also moved once again very close to China. We've seen an axis emerge between Russia and China in recent times, and that should concern us. I mean, it's all very well for us to have the bonhomie between India and Russia. We also expect the Russians to ensure that the Chinese recognize that they cannot take India for granted in any manner.
Right before.
It's happened we just had a recent incident, more of a diplomatic incident involving an Arunachali citizen of India, and the way the Chinese treated her. We've seen what happened in Galwan. We have to be careful of the Chinese. And I think the Russians must be told that in unequivocal terms. I think the Russians recognize that. And I think they recognize India's concerns over China. They will also recognize India's concerns, I hope, over Pakistan. We had Shahbaz Sharif go to Moscow a few months ago, literally, seeking Russian armaments. I think, Russia...
Rajdeep, I just want to dip into the news break that we're just getting in right now. Prime Minister, it seems that Kremlin was a little surprised, pleasantly so, by the warmth of Prime Minister Modi, that he came in to receive President Putin. That is what is being reported right now, because you had the Prime Minister personally go receive President Putin, receive him with a warm hug, and it seems...
And we are also surprised over the MH number plate. I don't know why should a Maharashtra car be the main car for the two leaders to move in Delhi? So obviously some car is coming from Mumbai, or certainly with a Maharashtra number plate, which they are using to travel together.
Really what is seen in the Prime Minister's cavalcade usually, I don't know, this looks like a Fortuner, Toyota Fortuner, or a car which is a Toyota make. But Gaurav, take a moment to reflect on our world global exclusive. This is an interview where a CNN or BBC would give an arm for. And you had President Putin choose, India Today to give that interview, because once this interview airs today at 9 p.m., this is not just in context of Southeast Asia. This is a global interview which will make international headlines.
It already is making headlines, and you're absolutely right. But it's also because India Today has credibility. India Today puts facts first, and India Today does not peddle the agenda that some of the organizations that you mentioned may do for their respective governments and organizations. Here, every question was put to President Putin. Hard questions were put to President Putin, and he responded. No color and no taint was added, to whatever he said or whatever we asked. This was absolutely unscripted. Questions just kept flowing from one to the other to the third. It was scheduled for 60 minutes. It lasted well over 90 minutes. And that went on to show that both sides were very comfortable talking to each other because there was no agenda per se. Point one, preconceived agenda. Point two, when it comes to China, we must keep in mind India is no babe in the woods that we will let China, walk all over us. We've seen that in 2017 in Dolam. We've seen that in Galwan in 2020. And we've seen that subsequently. We also saw what happened at Tianjin SCO. There's furious backpedaling even by China. Not on core issues, but at least on the face of it, because China also realizes India standing up for Indian interests first. Prime Minister Narendra Modi did not go running to America the way several leaders across the world did the moment tariffs were imposed. India had our red lines. Those red lines were made very clear, and respect for India has gone up across the world given the manner in which we've dealt with America so far, that we've not abandoned our all-weather friend Russia. Okay. That relationship is also growing, and we continue to engage with Europe, and our defense ties remain strong even with France. With America, well, the ball is in their court. Can they be trusted with military hardware and strategic weapons?
You know, how you see the pieces on the chessboard moving diplomatically does seem to suggest it's the time of multipolarity. But I'm going to circle back, to our global exclusive that's going to air at 9 p.m. this evening. If you're seeing those visuals on your television screen of Prime Minister and President Putin riding side by side in that motorcade to Lok Kalyan Marg, they've had that moment before, way back at the SCO summit. And guess what? We at the India Today group did pose that question to President Putin. Was it pre-planned? Whose idea was it? Listen in.
Very interesting question, because when you met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in SCO, and there was this picture and video of you and him going in a car, and we're showing it to our viewers right now. You were traveling in a car with him. Was it pre-planned, or how did it go about? How did it happen? And what did you discuss in the car?
Вы знаете, обсуждали текущие вопросы.
We were talking about just the current agenda. It was not pre-planned. We just went outside into the street, and my car was there, and I suggested that we should get together, just, as a sign of friendship, of comradeship. There's nothing, no complicated orchestration, just as friends. We got together in one car and we spoke. Along the road, there was always something to talk about. And, we had a conversation. We even sat in the car for quite some time. And then I said, yes, we should go because they're waiting for us. But there's nothing special about that. It just testifies to the fact that there's a lot we have to talk about. And these topics are of importance to us.
Right. President Sir, the fact that you're going to go to India, you just said that both leaders are going to cement the guarantees that you give each other. What are the kind of announcements that we can expect? We've heard about technology transfer. We've heard about trade enhancement. What are the solid announcements during this visit? And I ask you this is because the world, and you know who I mean, would be watching.
Ну, то, что мир будет следить за
the world is going to be watching. I don't think there's anything special about that. Because, India is a great country, 1.5 billion people. It's a developing economy where the rate of growth is 7.7%. This is the first result in the world. Prime Minister Modi has managed to achieve that, and this says a lot. The Indian nation can take pride in. There's a lot to be proud of. Of course, there are always detractors, critics who believe that this can be done better, but that said, the result is evident. We've got a whole plan for cooperation which covers the most important spheres and fields. The most important ones are certainly oriented towards the future, and one of them is high technology. India and Russia are working together in outer space exploration, in energy, nuclear energy in particular, which is well known because, one of the leaders in that field, also shipbuilding, aircraft building. We have very many interesting directions which are oriented towards the future. Or let's take artificial intelligence. We'll probably talk about that later. But this is one of the key technologies of the future which is reshaping the world as we speak, because it manages to multiply things many-fold, but at the same time it creates certain challenges to be addressed, and we'll talk about all of that. And as Prime Minister Modi thinks and what I think, well, we'll choose what is of the greatest significance at this stage, and we'll help with that.
Agreement, sir?
Well, of course, but we should probably not announce them right now because, you know, all of that is going to be announced in the course of the visit. We will present that to the public. And then the colleagues will present all of these agreements to us, and we'll have to give our final approval to these agreements.
All right, for more of that global world exclusive, you need to tune in to 9 p.m. on India Today. Like I said, viewers, this is an agenda-setting interview that's going to make international headlines. I want to just pull in, and I want to go back. Of course, that's the cavalcade pulling into Lok Kalyan Marg, but this particular frame, let's pull back to our world exclusive, and that particular frame, this is the Kremlin. This is the place where you have President Putin, who, decorates people. This is where most of the investitures happen. And right in front of that marquee statue that you see right in the middle. To give you more context on that, I'll pull in Sandeep, my colleague. Sandeep, would you want to talk to us a bit about what you find in the middle of this historic frame? Is a historic statue.
Nothing in Russia happens unscripted, and this exactly tells you is President Putin talking to two of the top journalists from India, giving India Today an exclusive interview, and in the middle you have a statue called Russia. It is a woman warrior in full armor of the 19th century. This is a statue that incidentally that was built in 1896. It is a Tsarist statue, and it portrays that warrior standing with a shield in her left hand and a sword in her right hand. She is in full armor, and she's protecting the emblems of Tsarist Russia, which is a scepter and it's a crown. And on the base of the statue is a slogan which says, "God save the Tsar." It is Imperial Russia. This is the statue of Imperial Russia at its height in the 19th century. So it's very interesting that President Putin would choose to put that statue right in the center of a very, very important interview, a very long one to India Today. It's a world exclusive, and we are all waiting to hear what he has to say. But that statue, that position of that statue is extremely important. It's very significant. It talks about Russian pride. It talks about Russian martial prowess, and the fact that it harks back to a time when Russia was one of the most important powers in the world. And of course, this has continued. A lot of people will read many meanings into that statue. The fact is that, Preeti, if you look at all the Russian strategic missile submarines of the Yuri Dolgoruki class, they are not named after figures from the Soviet Union. One would normally think that President Putin, who was a colonel in the KGB during the USSR, during the heydays of the Soviet Union, would name things after, the figures of the Soviet Union. Not one of the dozen or so strategic missile submarines, the most important military platforms of the Soviet Union, are named after Soviet figures. They are all named after Imperial Russian figures, whether it is generals, it's princes, it's generalissimos. All of them are from Imperial Russia, and that is essentially Russia signaling not just to the near abroad, but to the world that, it is a power, it is a civilizational state, it is more than 1,000 years of history. And Preeti, this is very well known that President Putin is a big history buff, and he has been known to lecture, guests. He's been known to lecture, interviewers. So I'm very curious about what he must have told Anjana and Geeta about Russian history, particularly Russian military history. He is what many people say a Tsarist. He goes back to the origins of Russia, whether it is in, Kievan Rus, where Russia began, in what is present-day Ukraine, going all the way up to the Grand Princes of Moscow, that's Ivan IV, who overthrew the Mongols and then over 1,000 years of Russian history. Catherine, Empress Catherine, after whom that hall is named incidentally, where they are giving that interview. That is the Catherine Hall in the Kremlin. So everything is symbolic. Everything is being chosen for a purpose. It's President Putin. It is the Kremlin. It is Russia, and it has had a history of signaling its interests, signaling its proud history, its martial traditions. All of that you can see in that one frame in one of the most important interviews given by President Putin in the 21st century, Preeti.
You know, you're bang on. And it's not just India that's looking at this interview. We've got, buyers across the country. We've got journalists across the country clocking down. And now it's just about an hour, 7 minutes where that interview, that world exclusive actually airs. And like we pointed out, definitely an agenda-setting interview that will make headlines. He's spoken in depth, not just about the India-Russia context, not even just, the Southeast Asia context, but more so when it comes down to the global order. And that's most important at this point of time to address, especially where President Putin is concerned. So his first interview in that context. I want to bring in Gaurav back into this conversation, and then Gaurav and I are going to switch places, Gaurav, because right now you've got visuals coming in of the motorcade of the Prime Minister along with President Putin pulling in to 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. There is an informal dinner today. Then tomorrow is where business is going to be conducted. But if there is a money shot, if there has been one moment which seems to have surprised Kremlin as well in a pleasant way of the warmth that was portrayed by the Prime Minister, where he personally came down to receive the President, give him that hug, ride with him in the same car, in that motorcade to Lok Kalyan Marg.
You know, this warmth is mutual. The respect is mutual. This is a friendship that actually goes back a long way. 2001, when Narendra Modi was Chief Minister of Gujarat and he'd accompanied then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Moscow for the summit. And incidentally, President Putin was then President. Prime Minister Narendra Modi recalls that President Putin had treated him very well. He, went out of the way, engaged with him, spoke to him, gave him a lot of respect. And that's the time that this relationship actually developed as Gujarat and Akhtar Khan, becoming two partner states. And then when Prime Minister Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister of India in 2014, this relationship actually soared to new heights because both are very strong leaders, both history buffs, both talk about, President Putin, Russia first, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India first, and how they can dovetail this relationship, which has actually held both countries in great stead in the past. And then they've stood by each other through thick and thin. India did not abandon Russia. Remember when the S-400s were being taken, that time America threatened to impose sanctions on India under CAATSA. India still went ahead. 39,000 crore rupee deal for the S-400, $5.5 billion. India still went ahead, risked the CAATSA sanctions, ultimately got a waiver. And you've seen in Op Sindoor, they've held us in good stead. Even now, America wants to put a lot of pressure on India, including 25% additional tariffs. India's still going ahead and engaging with Russia. And we'll just watch for those conversations. President Putin just said that I'm going to meet my good friend Narendra Modi. That meeting with good friend Narendra Modi is happening right now. Let's see what comes out of this, Preeti.
Well, let's see what comes out of that. But yes, this is a new chapter in a relationship that has endured decades, because Russia and India have had a friendship that has constantly evolved over decades. But one thing has been a constant in that evolution. They have had each other's back. I want to cut across to what President Putin spoke in the context of the Russia-India friendship when we spoke with him at the Kremlin in Moscow. Listen in.
Dear viewers, hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Aaj Tak India Today and I'm Anjana Om Kashyap and we're at Kremlin today and you're about to witness history, a very historic moment. It is said that when two old friends meet, they have their private jokes. They have a lot of banter, they have a lot of fun and they have a bonhomie or camaraderie. But the others in the room might feel a little uncomfortable. And why do I say this? I say this because As the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, meets Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi, the world will be watching very, very closely. Vladimir Putin is undoubtedly one of the most influential politicians of the world whose decisions don't just affect Russia, but numerous nations across the world. He's a very compelling and enigmatic figure on the world stage. It just doesn't get more exciting than this.
Well, that's right, Anjana. Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan. We have with us a man who is known to be one of the world's longest-serving leaders. He's seen it all, through wars and economic recessions, from disintegration of countries to a changed world order, from Boris Yeltsin to Donald Trump, from Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Manmohan Singh to Narendra Modi. He's seen the world change right in front of him, and he's taken Russia through very turbulent times and yet has cemented his position as a force to reckon with. Thank you so much, President, for doing this with us. You're in conversation with India Today and Aaj Tak. That's the President of the Russian Federation for you.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on our network. How are you doing?
Надеюсь, что и вам у нас в России.
Well, I do hope that you find it great in Russia, in Moscow. You like Moscow and the Kremlin, where we're working.
Плану.
Well, as you can see, everything is according to plan. On the whole, we're happy with the economic situation. And what's most important, this month, I'm very happy that I'm going to meet, as you have just pointed out, my friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We agreed to meet in India a long time ago. There's a lot to talk about because the range of our cooperation with India is very huge. I'm not even talking about history of our relations because this history is of a unique nature. And I would also like to point out that the path that India has traveled since gaining its independence, just over the 77 years, which is a very short span in the scale of history, and India has managed to travel a great way. And I'm going to dwell on that a little bit later. But, you know, when we live our daily lives, we hardly notice the changes that are currently afoot. It rarely happens when we notice these changes. But if we have a look back at the history, we'll see that what transpired in India is, to a large extent, a miracle. Well, I don't think there are many people living in India who know that the longevity, the life expectancy of India over the 77 years has
We will talk about longevity in some time from now.
Хорошо, поговорим обязательно. Но во всяком
certainly going to talk about
наши отношения.
But be that as it may, our relations with India are developing across different ranges, different avenues. I'm very happy to have this chance to meet Prime Minister Modi.
Связывают не только деловые, но и...
And not just business ties, but also personal ties.
Under 1 hour to go for that world exclusive interview of the Russian President Vladimir Putin by India Today's Geeta Mohan and Anjana Om Kashyap. And he's taken all questions. You would want to know what next when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. What next when it comes to President Trump's post-Alaska meeting engagement with President Putin. Remember, President Trump's special envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, they were in Moscow, in Kremlin, when this interview was being filmed and, of course, was being shot. And then President Putin has just arrived in India. He's meeting his old friend Narendra Modi, and he said so. I'm looking forward to meeting my old friend Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India. Two very strong leaders. Their vision taking India-Russia relationship forward. So far, defense and strategy were key areas where this relationship was on an even keel. Now the effort is economic cooperation, business cooperation, people-to-people cooperation, because that's required to give a new impetus to this relationship. So what's their vision? There's a big business delegation that's accompanying the Russian president. We'll talk about that in greater detail. But first, all eyes across the world on this India Today exclusive interview. And I want to begin by asking you just to listen in to what President Putin spoke of about his visit to India and meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
From Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Manmohan Singh to Narendra Modi, he's seen the world change right in front of him.
Undoubtedly one of the most influential politicians of the world. He's a very compelling and enigmatic figure on the world stage.
The President of the Russian Federation for you.
So what is the Russian president thinking about the Russia-Ukraine war? What's the road ahead? In this India Today world exclusive, global exclusive, we bring you an interview of unprecedented access and significance. For the first time on world television, Russian President Vladimir Putin, he speaks candidly and he's spoken at length. He was to speak for about an hour. This interview lasted more than 1.5 hours. The interview airs in about 55 minutes from now. President Putin, his comments on US President Donald Trump's tariff pressure tactics on India, the way America was trying to arm twist India not to be so close to Russia. Did that really work? When you look at those images at the Palam technical area in Delhi, when the Russian president's aircraft arrived, and the images that you will see tomorrow, clearly pressure tactics have not worked on India. It's a very clear, it's a forceful message. President Putin underscores Russia's support for India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And of course, vice versa is something that you will see. So in this pointed observation, he emphasizes India is a major global power. India is no longer some British colony, no longer some former British colony, and that the West cannot talk down to India, cannot be addressed in the manner in which India may have been addressed by the West 77 years ago. And he's saying why, he's also explaining why. He says, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is not the one to give in to pressure. Listen in.
But my question to you now would be about defense. And India continues to be the biggest defense buyer. Roughly 38% of the market from Russia is bought by India. My question to you, sir, is in view of the sanctions by the US or the tariffs they have laid on India, the arm twisting methods that are being adopted, and I name it's America. How do you plan to circumvent all this? Will you pull back or push harder?
Но мне кажется, что и Индия, весь мир увидели.
Well, I think both the world and India have seen that one cannot talk to India the way they used to talk to it 77 years ago. India is a great power, not an English or British colony, and everyone will have to take that into account. And moreover, the head of the Indian government, Prime Minister Modi, is not one to give in to pressure. The Indian nation can take pride in their Prime Minister. It's absolutely evident Prime Minister Modi has a firm position, which is not, however, confrontational, nor are we going to enter into confrontation with anyone. We are simply trying to defend our legitimate interests, and that is exactly what India is doing. What are the obstacles? There's transactions and payments, but more than 90% of our transactions are carried out in national currencies. There are certain difficulties, of course, because there are intermediaries, but there are solutions to that, because we can transition to using the systems for financial messaging systems, which we have offered by the Bank of Russia and by our Indian counterparts. And we are doing this work steadily. And those who are taking steps to limit the economic cooperation of third parties sooner or later will incur losses. And I think once this understanding settles in completely and fully, then this practice of pressure from outside is gone.
So just under 55 minutes to go for that India Today world exclusive to play out. We will tell you what President Vladimir Putin is thinking. So 53 minutes to go, that biggest global exclusive. I also want to bring into this conversation General Deepak Kapoor, former Chief of Army Staff, joining me on this broadcast. With me, Sandeep Puneethan stays with me on this broadcast, as does my colleague Preeti Chaudhary. General Kapoor, welcome as always. Your view of what President Putin said about Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the fact that you cannot talk down to India today the way you could 77 years ago. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is not the one to give in to pressure.
Thank you, Gaurav. I tend to agree with what President Putin said, and it implies that India today is a growing power, and therefore it can hold its own on the world arena. And to that extent, President Putin has said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi would stand his ground if he has to in national interest, which I feel definitely he would do so, and ensure that the Indian interests are best served while interacting at the regional as well as the global level.
Okay, sir, permit me to interrupt you for a moment. These are live images that are coming in from 7 Lok Kalyan Marg residents of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, specially decked in Indian and Russian colors. The Prime Minister received the Russian President at his official residence, the 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. So not only is this pathway draped in the Indian tricolor and the Russian flag, but also the lights that you notice, the Indian flag and the Russian flag. The two very comfortable together. Preeti, both of them, the Indian Prime Minister and the Russian President, they've been friends for a very long time and they're very, very comfortable with each other.
You know, the history stands testimony to that, Gaurav, you know, because it's not just coming together of two leaders who are fairly very, very comfortable with each other. And, you know, if you're looking at photo opportunity and that one moment, it was there, you were reporting through it, you know, in where the SCO summit was concerned. So even there, because in diplomacy, so much is read in terms of just body language, and there seems to be a sense of ease here. Having said that, there's a larger context to it. This friendship is born out of a legacy, Gaurav, where the two countries, Russia and India, have stood by each other.
Okay, that's the first picture of the two of them together in the car, in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's car. So the first image that we showed you, the two of them getting together in that vehicle at Palam technical area. And this is a selfie. It's actually a picture that's been taken by somebody on the front seat of the Toyota. And they're very, very comfortable together. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President Vladimir Putin. In Tianjin, we saw President Putin wait quite some time for the Prime Minister to arrive, and then the two sat in the car and had a long conversation, and then they drove out together. India Today's Geeta Mohan and Anjana Om Kashyap put that question to President Putin, and in about 50 minutes from now, you'll hear the answer. He explains why he waited for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, why they spoke in the car, and how they traveled together to that destination. Let me also tell you, Kremlin has just reported that they were pleasantly surprised to see Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the airport to receive President Putin. They're expected India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, to receive the Russian President. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi was there to receive him, and they traveled together in the Prime Minister's car. The signal to the world is, ye dosti hum nahi chhodenge. Kitna bhi pressure dunya bana le. Sandeep, the world may want to mount a lot of pressure on India impose an additional 25% tariffs, but then ye dosti hum nahi todenge. That's the signal that goes out from New Delhi tonight.
Absolutely, Gaurav. And just look at that photograph. Look at that bonhomie. Look at that camaraderie. It's like, Jay and Viru literally from Sholay. And, that is the kind of bonhomie, the chemistry that these two leaders share. And Gaurav, very importantly, today is Navy Day. And I have to raise this here, the fact that it was 54 years back tonight that the Indian Navy carried out one of the most devastating naval attacks in the 20th century when they used Russian-supplied equipment, Russian missile boats, Russian P-15 missiles to inflict a very big, catastrophic naval defeat on the Pakistan Navy.
They bombed
sank
Karachi.
3 ships. They bombed Karachi, and this was it. December 4th, 1971. It was this night, 54 years back, that the Indian Navy made its fiery debut in this war, the 14-day war against Pakistan. And that war, again, Gaurav, could not have been possible but for Russian hardware. So you're literally looking at the anniversary of that great moment 54 years back. And it continues, Gaurav. That support from Russia continues with the BrahMos missiles, with the S-400, and let's not forget, with the diplomatic support that Russia gives us on the world stage. It was the vetoes.
So give me a moment as I try and bring in a perspective from Moscow. I have Fred Wire joining me from Moscow. Fred, welcome. How is Moscow viewing this? We're getting opinion from the world, but I would want to understand from you, sir, how is Moscow viewing President Putin's visit to India?
Well, it's always a big deal. I mean, these summits have been a regular feature since the 90s. Post-Soviet feature, and it has always loomed large on Russian diplomatic agenda. That relationship is solid, and you've had a lot of people on talking about that. But it is changing, and one of the things that is driving that change is the Ukraine war, which has been a catalyst that's accelerating all the global shifts that have been taking place. And one of the things that's happened is that Russia has decided that its former aspirations to integrate economically, to some extent politically, especially with Europe. It was a big thing in the first decade of the Putin era that's finished. The experience that Russia has had, especially with Europe, and it goes on to this moment, has put Russia off Europe and also severed its economic links with it. So Putin comes to India with a whole new perspective about Russia's future. The war is winding to a close, and he is looking beyond that to the shape of a global order, Russia's place in it, and who its friends will be. And it's not a surprise that top of the agenda is India. This is, all the good reasons, India's dynamic economy, its long-term friendship and understanding of Russia, all these things, but there are also a host of untapped potential in the economic sphere that for all you can say about the great relationship the two countries have had.
Mentioned the untapped potential of economic relationship, because so far there's been a lot on defense, there's been a lot on energy, but on trade, on people to people, on business. This visit of President Putin makes that effort. But Fred, request you to stay with me. Deepak Kapoor is with me. I want to quickly cut across to Washington, D.C. Seema Sirohi is a senior journalist and analyst, wrote a best-selling book, Friends with Benefits, on India-US relationship. Seema, welcome. This could have been President Trump's moment. He was to come to India for the Quad Summit. He chose to punish India, and President Putin, in that exclusive interview to India today, and you'll hear that in a moment, Seema, he made it very clear America's following double standards, or words to that effect. America continues to procure from Russia, but is penalizing India for doing so. So how would President Putin's visit to India be viewed in Washington, D.C., Seema?
Thank you, Gaurav. I think, in short, it will be viewed with some concern, especially if new defense deals are signed. But at the same time, President Trump has treated India in a very shabby manner. He's put the maximum tariffs, on India compared to any other country. So the relationship with the US has gone down, and it's in a kind of holding spot, I would say. They'll be watching this visit with very keen eyes, but I think they will get the message that India wants to engage with all major countries. Nobody can sort of veto India's relations with another major partner. And Russia has been a very major partner for India over the years. For Mr. Putin, the message would be that he has options. India is a major option. Now, you were talking about the economic relationship between Russia and India. I think we should remember that the trade deficit is in Russia's favor to the tune of $65 billion. That's not a very happy thing. So, of course, India is keen that Russia should buy more from India, and that, I think, would be a point of difference between the two sides. But overall, this is a very important visit. The message is going out to Europe and to the US that India is standing firm in its attempt to have friends with all major poles in the world right now.
And nobody can talk down to us. President Putin said so in as many words. Seema, stay with me. I want to bring in General Deepak Kapoor. It's just 42 minutes to go for that India Today World exclusive. Because 42 minutes from now, you will hear the Russian president speak and give out his worldview. And there are very important signals there for Europe, for Ukraine, for the United States, and of course for friends like India, and especially India. General Kapoor, would India risk additional sanctions if India were to go in for 5 more regiments of S-400s and look at the S-500s and look at the Su-57s? There are some who say that we are looking at 2 squadrons of Su-57 as an interim.
Gaurav, let me say this, that India has always followed a policy of strategic autonomy. And that is something which has carried through right since independence. I think that's a policy which will hold India in good stead. Yes, you're right. It may face a little more difficulty when additional S-400 missile air defense systems are asked for, or S-500 air defense systems, or Su-57 production is talked about. But that's something India has to stay with, and therefore it is in India's national interest to be able to go through with those agreements with Russia and carry on ensuring that its strategic autonomy is maintained all throughout.
General, if I may, given your long career as a young lieutenant all the way to the chief of the army staff, you've operated Russian equipment extensively and also Swedish equipment, the Bofors 155mm howitzers. I want to understand from you, if we were to talk about Russia as a reliable defense partner and the United States, the problems that the Air Force has had with the G404 engines then and now, Sea-King and Sea Harrier spares after the Pokhran test, virtually the entire fleet was grounded. The ANTPQ-37 radars that did not come and cost us in Kargil. Who would you say is a more reliable strategic partner? And would that weigh in when India decides whether we want to go in for the F-35s or the Su-57s?
Gaurav, I'd like to say this, that I have, during 1971 operations, operated with the Russian equipment. Right since then, I have seen the Russian equipment in the not only in the Indian Army, but also the Air Force and the Navy as well. If I may say so, Russia has been an extremely important strategic partner who has stood by India throughout, whether in the military sphere or at the diplomatic level, even at the Security Council of the United Nations. So Russia has been definitely a partner who has stayed with us throughout. And just because of all that, the acquisition of weapon systems that are there with India today are approximately 2/3 of Russian origin. So there may be a problem about compatibility of weapons between the Western technology weapons and the Russian. So even if we are looking for any kind of changes, it's going to take time. All these changes have to take place over a period of acceptance by the services after trials, etc., which is a long drawn-out process. So to that extent, we are still dependent to a large extent on Russian weapon systems, and their support has to continue. While the overall content of the Russian equipment may have gone down from this period of 2012 to 2016 from 68% to 59%, we are still quite dependent on the Russian equipment and their spares, etc., to carry on. And let me say this, that in Op Sindoor, we've been able to use that equipment to advantage, and it has stood by us very well. So in the future, I see this continuation of this relationship and assistance from Russia, especially in the field of getting a fresh lot of aircraft, naval ships, as well as within the army, S-500 air defense systems, as well as additional tanks like we are manufacturing today, the T-90 tank.
The T-72 and the T-90 Bhishma. Sir, give me a moment, 37 minutes to go for that big India Today world exclusive to come. And Preeti, if I could draw you in for a moment, President Putin saying Prime Minister Narendra Modi is not a man you can put under pressure. India today is not the India of 77 years ago. That's a signal actually to Europe and the United States of America that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will not buckle under pressure.
Bang on, Gaurav. You're very right there because, you know, this is messaging, this is global messaging, but this also stems from the fact that today you have a Russia which stands globally isolated where at least the West is concerned. So you see that Asia pivot where Russia is looking at India. And with India as an old friend. Russia is also looking at China, but China will bring its scale. India will bring it global legitimacy. But for India as well, you know, on our part, we are looking at Russia primarily. I think our biggest reason would be global neutrality. You know, that where the geopolitics of the world is concerned, especially where you're talking about China vis-a-vis India, that Russia remains geopolitically neutral, having its interests lie in China as well. So it is, you know, in a way a symbiotic relationship which is built on past history, and therefore you see that kind of bonhomie which stems from comfort because Russia has always been on our side of the divide in the historical context. But there is that current layer to it as well, which one can't really deny.
I will get Ambassador Trigunayat to respond to that. 35 minutes to go for that India Today world exclusive to come up. But before that, what's the end game in Ukraine? Because that's the question on everybody's mind. While you hear that interview at 9 o'clock, let me give you a teaser, a little trailer. Listen into what President Trump said. Fred, coming to you in Moscow in just a moment, but listen in to President Putin on the end game when it comes to Russia-Ukraine conflict.
What is the end game for Vladimir Putin in Ukraine?
Так я же сказал.
Well, I've just said it.
Мы признали вот эти...
We have recognized, listen,
Мы 8 лет не
for
признавали
8 years we did not recognize the self-declared republics. For 8 years, they have declared the independence,
А мы старались наладить
and we were trying
с остальной частью
to build
Украины.
relations between the rest of Ukraine
Потом,
and
когда
these
поняли, что это
republics.
невозможно,
When
что
we
их просто уничтожают,
understood that it's impossible, that they're simply being destroyed, we were forced to recognize them, and not simply recognize them as their partial territory, but within the administrative borders, when they existed back in the Soviet times.
а потом во времена независимой
And later,
Украины,
during the times of the independent Ukraine, after it gained independence,
административных границ.
in the
И мы сразу Украине
administrative
сказали,
limits,
украинским войскам, люди не хотят с вами жить. Они вышли на референдум, проголосовали
so
за
the
независимость.
people, the voters, came to the referendum and voted for everyone to withdraw troops from there and not to conduct any armed actions there. But they preferred to wage war. And now it all came to a head. And it all comes to one thing.
вооруженным путем освободить
Either we do that
эти территории,
through
либо украинские
military action will liberate the territories, or the Ukrainian troops will withdraw and leave these territories and stop killing people there.
So I've given you a glimpse. The president has an endgame in mind. 9 o'clock. Just about 34 minutes from now. 9 o'clock. Just about 34 minutes from now, that big India Today world exclusive play. You want to hear what one of the most powerful men in the world thinks. I want to bring in Ambassador Trigunayat for more on this. Ambassador, in your view, Ambassador Trigunayat for more on this. Ambassador, in your view, there are many who say President Putin a change that Europe doesn't want to acknowledge. The American delegation was in Moscow. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was in Moscow. The Russian president was there. Nobody from Europe was there. What does that indicate, Ambassador?
Well, this indicates, number one, that Russia and Europe have got this kind of a dividing line, which will be very difficult to fill. And this also goes in the historic context between them. I mean, empire times, you know that. The Russians were the ones who defeated Hitler, the Germany nurses that wounds. There has been problem with Japan. There has also been problem with France. Napoleon was defeated in Russia.
Yes.
So I think that Britishers also have the same kind of problem. So that's why you see that this is something going much deeper. But today's time and age, and I have lived in Russia, so I know that the Russians generally identify themselves with Europeans. That's also true. And they want to be close to Europe. But unfortunately, today the line has been drawn, which is very difficult to fill. At the same time, no isolation, I don't think there is an isolation, because Russians realize that Europe is not going to be the same again. Therefore, they have moved towards Eurasia. And that is one area. And Africa, they are very much in a big way going into Africa. In fact, yesterday only I saw the Sudanese have offered them another port. They are also back in Middle East with Syria again. They are in action with the Saudis, with the Emiratis. So you can't say that they have been isolated in any way. I mean, UAE has become their entrepot for all the trade, despite these sanctions that the West countries have imposed.
Yes.
As far as India is concerned, it remains a very steady and a substantive partnership and a strategic partnership, and which we have seen today when he arrived in Delhi, and Prime Minister Modi personally went to receive him, and they again drove together. So this has been very much evident. So now more than half of the world's population, if you were to see simply the countries, are also friends with Russia. So therefore, in that sense, it is, I think it will not be right to say that Russia has been isolated. Of course, there will always be a geopolitical contestation, but the Americans are also playing their own cards with the Russians on the bilateral front. And the secondary front is, of course, the Ukrainian war. They want to end so that the irritant is gone.
So let me bring in Fred Weil into this to understand, is Europe actually feeling left out in a way, Europe and Ukraine and some countries in Europe, because America is engaging with Russia, America is also engaging at some levels with China, America is also engaging with India, and they're trying to find a solution. President Putin said so himself. When a question was asked, when India Today asked him a question about what he thought of President Trump and his efforts. So 30 minutes from now, you'll hear his answer. But Fred, your take, is Europe increasingly getting isolated?
Well, in this case, regarding the Ukraine war, it's been clearly sidelined. We've watched this process over recent weeks, and the Europeans did try to insert themselves into Trump's new peace offensive. They produced at least 3 drafts of what they deemed to be a peace settlement plan, and each one of them contains so many spoilers, like points that are absolutely impossible to be accepted in Moscow. And so you saw this very clearly in the talks that occurred on Monday in the Kremlin, with Trump's 2 emissaries talking with Putin for 5 hours. They were supposed to fly on to Brussels, where they would meet with Vladimir Zelensky and Europeans, and they chose not to. They just got on the plane and flew back to Washington. So there is absolutely no doubt that the Americans have given up on Europe as an interlocutor in this process, and that whatever final settlement is going to be made, if, and we must hope it will be, it's going to be Putin, Trump, and Zelensky sorting it out. The Europeans are on the sidelines. They can produce as many drafts and make as many magical incantations about how things should be as they want. I think they're going to be ignored. And it is possible. I think it's very likely. I feel optimistic for the first time in a long time that this process can lead to the necessary compromises that will bring this war to an end. And the main reason is that the Americans are dangling various incentives to Putin that he wants. That is normalization of relations with the United States, trade and business cooperation with the United States. Again, Europe's interests aren't being included in that in any way.
But on that very important aspect, President Putin doesn't want to let go of any territory, and 27 minutes to go for that big India Today World exclusive. But Seema Sirohi, across the Atlantic, is that how you view it in the United States of America? Europe increasingly getting sidelined. President Trump, President Putin will directly engage with President Zelensky and try and find a solution? Or President Zelensky will always have the support of at least some European leaders, Germany, France, United Kingdom, and, this war will become endless?
Well, I agree with Fred that Europe has kind of been sidelined. They have made big promises and they have egged on Zelensky to keep fighting, but they know that they have limitations of their own. Now, President Trump is dealing directly with the Russians. So, Europe has actually a lot of stake in this whole thing, but no power to sort of enforce what it wants. Zelensky has also started to say he's sort of, modified his position to wanting a dignified peace. He's willing to make compromises. Now, the question is how long it takes for both sides to come together. But it's true that the US is kind of washing its hands off this war. If this time it doesn't work, people are saying over here in Washington that President Trump is just going to give up on this. I'm not sure. I'm sure that Putin realizes that. So he will also make moves that sort of push towards peace, if it means compromises on his side. So let's see how it unfolds, but it's a situation is very unpredictable. But
it indeed is. But from his answers, yes, from his answers 25 minutes from now, you will get a fair idea of which direction he wants to move forward in. We'll see if more emerges from that after his interaction with Prime Minister Narendra Modi over dinner tonight and during the dialogue tomorrow. Sandeep, are we to then believe that India-Russia relationship and India-US relationship are being held hostage by the Russia-Ukraine conflict? We can't move forward in either direction because it'll invite more sanctions if we were to move closer to Russia. And we cannot trust the Americans, given those sanctions, that we don't move forward in that direction much either.
Well, absolutely, Gaurav. And, if you look at it in the 21st century, especially post-Pokhran, India-US ties had been on the mend, and we got a strategic partnership going with the United States. And we have never been asked to choose between the West or Russia in the way that we've been asked to do now. And this is a big, big problem for India and its strategic autonomy when it comes to being asked to choose between the Russian Federation or the United States. And we have chosen this path of strategic autonomy. And there's no doubt about the fact that it is the Russia-Ukraine war that has imposed the maximum pressure on our relationships, both with the Russian Federation as well as the United States. Because, Gaurav, while you're talking about the arms that we're getting from Russia, these come with a cost of possible sanctions that the United States could impose, exactly like we saw a couple of years back. And let's not kid ourselves, Gaurav, in 2025, the sanctions are not going to be of the kind of CATSA that we saw a few years back, which we could evade, because now the United States will try to pressure us, will try to pressure Russia by whatever means possible. And we've seen the kind of language, we've seen the kind of actions that the United States has embarked upon with these kind of tariffs, unprecedented tariffs that they've imposed on India. So everything is on the table, literally, Gaurav. And this is something that this all can be traced down to the Russia-Ukraine war and the pressure the West wants to bring on Russia.
Could the West and could the United States be shooting itself in the foot? Because India today put that question on rupee-ruble trade to President Putin. That full interview in 23 minutes from now, but I want you to listen into an excerpt. I'll bring in Ambassador Trigonath and my guests once again on that, but listen into President Putin on the rupee-ruble trade.
The biggest thing when you have these blocks is how do you make it economically viable? Are we looking at alternative payment systems? Is there going to be a BRICS currency? Or are we looking at alternative payments in terms of national currencies? Rupee ruble.
Moving towards de-dollarization, basically.
Well, you know, there is no need for haste. And if there is no hurry, then you will avoid many grave mistakes. Let's have a look at Europe. They created the Euro system and they involved in that Eurozone several countries that were economically unprepared for a single currency. Hence, problems with regulating a number of issues related to the social system. You know, you cannot simply work with the national currency because there is one single currency, hence problems with the budget. We do not have this goal of building a single currency in BRICS at this stage and point. This has to be done very carefully, prudently.
And we need to use national currencies. We need to use wider the capacity of the new development bank of BRICS. For example, we've proposed to create a new investment platform that would use electronic payments with a minimum capital of $100 billion to begin with, in order to create conditions for joint investment both in our economy and the economies of the developing global south.
So 20 minutes to go for that India Today world exclusive interview with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. He's right now in 7 local. He left Moscow at the Kremlin. So 20 minutes to go for that interview. Ambassador Trigonath, de-dollarization doesn't appear to be happening in a hurry. Is that the impression you also get from this conversation that India Today had with President Putin? But rupee-ruble trade, you know, the Mir system and India's rupee system, do you see that, that deal happening, forward movement there?
Well, as you know, that nearly 85 to 90% of our trade with Russia is being settled through national currencies, and rest through UAE and other mechanisms. And we have mastered this since the Soviet times, if you remember, the Russia rupee-ruble trade. Yes. So that is a mechanism that works, and that is being worked upon. And now that we have the Bank of Russia opening their office in Delhi, I think this will be smoothed out even further. Now, as you know, that the dollar is essentially some kind of a sovereign identity of the United States. So therefore, they feel that anything that is dented is direct impact on their sovereignty. And that's why the de-dollarization is really a red rag for the Americans, especially for President Trump. But the fact remains is that they are the ones who started weaponization of financial instruments themselves. And they have created this spate of countries rushing for bilateral currencies and national currency mechanisms. Nobody wants to undermine the dollar regime, but at the same time, countries have to adopt methodologies to protect themselves, and India has done. UPI with 23 countries, actually, we have signed the agreements. And we should perhaps expect one of the agreements on UPI and the Russian system to be signed this time. But that is what is going to help the Russians also in getting more tourists from India. That's one of the major drawbacks at the moment as far as the tourism is concerned, apart from the trade.
Okay. And Seema Sirohi, would you see America weaponize this further against India in case India were to procure additional regiments of the S-400, go in for the S-500, go in for the Su-57s? Not that it's happening overnight, but will all of this depend on peace between Russia and Ukraine, or India risks additional sanctions?
See, I know there's a lot of excitement around President Putin's visit to India, but I think the government of India would not want the fallout from this visit to affect the US relationship too much. So, because you might notice that while President Trump has gone all out to punish India, the government of India has been extremely careful in what it has said over the last few months. So what India wants is to maintain a good partnership with the US and ride it out for the next 3 years. Now, if Russia will push for the Su-57s, no doubt. But and the Americans are pushing for their 5th gen fighters for India to buy. That's a huge decision. And if there is any announcement on the Russian planes during this visit, I think it will not go down well in Washington, that's for sure. But whether they impose, more sanctions, that remains to be seen, because, it'll affect other parts of the relationship and other equations, including with Russia, because Trump is trying to make peace with, on the Ukraine war. So
absolutely.
He's deployed...
so the Quad summit is not happening right now. The Quad summit is not happening, but there's a Quad anti-terror meeting that's happening in Delhi right now. Even as the Russian president is here, the Russian defense minister, health minister, all of them are here. There's also a Quad summit, Quad officials meeting on anti-terrorism also happening. Fred, the last 30 seconds I have on this part of the show, I want to understand from you, what does Russia expect to take back from this summit between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Putin?
Incredibly important. All the things that people are saying about the messaging of this summit are awfully important to Russia, because it is sort of still beleaguered in the line of fire. It is experiencing the biggest wave of sanctions ever leveled against the country. So that's important. But I think Putin seriously wants to cement a new, higher level relationship with India, with in-depth economic relations. I think you'll see a lot of overtures from the Russians to solve problems like that trade deficit, to make Russia more friendly to Indian workers and business investors. They're very conscious of this. They're very, I think they're eager to get this relationship on a new footing. I think they believe the Ukraine war is going to be ended soon. I think they're right, and that episode will be behind us, and there'll be a whole new world. And Putin really wants to set the groundwork for that.
Okay, so just 9 minutes to go for that India Today World Exclusive coming up, Sandeep. And perhaps more access for Indian pharmaceuticals healthcare, agricultural products to Russia. That's something that India is also keenly looking at, Sandeep.
Absolutely, Gaurav. And the aim is to diversify beyond the traditional areas that we have is energy and defense. And we're looking at other areas like, as you mentioned, pharmaceuticals. Shipping is another major area of cooperation, Gaurav. You know, the government of India has a vision to become a major shipping power in terms of manufacturing its own ships, you know, and unveiled a very, very big plan. And Russia plans to build its ships in India. There's a lot of collaboration that's on there, especially on the Arctic route, the northern route. There are multiple routes that India and Russia are discussing where they can actually collaborate and all that. So the aim is to get to that 100 billion figure by the end of this decade, Gaurav. And I'm sure they would want to have a more balanced relationship between India and Russia, the trade figures, rather than this hugely skewed trade deficit that's usually in favor of Russia, and to move away from those traditional areas to go into other new areas like, you know, pharma, electronics, automobiles, another very big area.
Yes.
President Putin has praised India's automobile sector repeatedly, and he's, you know, spoken about how India has created this huge automobile sector all by itself in the last couple of decades. Those are areas that we can talk about. You know, the fact is that a lot of Indian manufacturers do not have a presence in Russia. Why is that? Those are areas of cooperation that can be worked out. So literally, Gaurav, you know, the sky is the limit. And this is something that we have to see in the next couple of hours. We will know once and for all where the India-Russia relationship
absolutely,
is headed in the next couple of years.
Not even the sky. Now, outer space is the limit, given the fact that outer space cooperation is also something that both countries are looking at. So 7 minutes, 47 seconds to go for that big India Today World Exclusive. Stay with us here. We'll be back at 10:30 tonight once this interview is played out. I want to thank all our guests. Back at 10:30 to discuss that World Exclusive coming up at 9 p.m. tonight. Stay with us. Coming up at 9 p.m. tonight. Stay with us.
in association with
Century Ply Club Prime. रहो बेफिक्र।
सल्यूट है जी, आप देश की रक्षा में जान लगा देते हैं
और आप
घर घर में तार लगाते हैं जी। ई बीम टेक्नोलॉजी से बनी, न जले न पिघले, सबकी रक्षा करे।
हम सरहद पर लोगों की रक्षा करते हैं और आप देश के अंदर। सल्यूट तो बनता है जी।
अपार अणुशक्ति फायर प्रोटेक्ट वायर, अपार देश का तार।
पैसा लगाना है तो सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम पे लगाओ। डूबेगा नहीं, जलेगा भी नहीं, कोई खा नहीं जाएगा, धोखा नहीं देगा, ऊपर नीचे भी नहीं होगा, सेफ रहेगा, सिक्योर्ड में मिनिमम 30 साल का रिटर्न देगा। अब इससे बेटर इन्वेस्टमेंट है तो बताओ। सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम, रहो बेफिक्र। पैसा लगाना है तो सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम पे लगाओ। डूबेगा नहीं, जलेगा भी नहीं, कोई खा नहीं जाएगा, धोखा नहीं देगा, ऊपर नीचे भी नहीं होगा, सेफ रहेगा, सिक्योर्ड में मिनिमम 30 साल का रिटर्न देगा। अब इससे बेटर इन्वेस्टमेंट है तो बताओ। सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम, रहो बेफिक्र।
Hi, Sana here with a quick AQI update. Delhi 274, Mumbai 172, Kolkata 191, Bangalore 116, Chennai 69, Hyderabad 162. पैसा लगाना है तो सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम पे लगाओ। डूबेगा नहीं, जलेगा भी नहीं, कोई खा नहीं जाएगा, धोखा नहीं देगा, ऊपर नीचे भी नहीं होगा, सेफ रहेगा, सिक्योर्ड में मिनिमम 30 साल का रिटर्न देगा। अब इससे बेटर इन्वेस्टमेंट है तो बताओ। सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम, रहो बेफिक्र।
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Co-presented by Kia, movement that inspires.
In view of the sanctions by the US, the arm twisting methods that are being adopted, how do you plan to circumvent all this? Will you pull back or push harder?
Do you want to go back to being a part of the G8? Because that's a lot, there are a lot of reports on that. So is that something that Russia is looking at?
When you met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in SCO, and there was this picture and video of you and him going in a car, how did it go about? How did it happen? And What did you discuss in the car?
Complicated orchestration just as friends. We got together in one car and we spoke. Along the road, there was always something to talk about.
What are the solid announcements during this visit? And I ask you this is because the world, and you know who I mean, would be watching.
Dear viewers, hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Aaj Tak India Today and I'm Anjana Om Kashyap and we're at Kremlin today and you're about to witness history, a very historic moment. It is said that when two old friends meet, they have their private jokes. They have a lot of banter, they have a lot of fun and they have a bonhomie or camaraderie. But the others in the room might feel a little uncomfortable. And why do I say this? I say this because as the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, meets Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi, the world will be watching very, very closely. Vladimir Putin is undoubtedly one of the most influential politicians of the world whose decisions don't just affect Russia, but numerous nations across the world. He's a very compelling and enigmatic figure on the world stage. It just doesn't get more exciting than this.
Well, that's right, Anjana. Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan. We have with us a man who is known to be one of the world's longest-serving leaders. He's seen it all, through wars and economic recessions, from disintegration of countries to a changed world order, from Boris Yeltsin to Donald Trump, from Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Manmohan Singh to Narendra Modi. He's seen the world change right in front of him, and he's taken Russia through very turbulent times and yet has cemented his position as a force to reckon with. Thank you so much, President, for doing this with us. You're in conversation with India Today and Aaj Tak. That's the President of the Russian Federation for you.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on our network. How are you doing?
Надеюсь, что и вам у нас в России.
Well, I hope you'll enjoy your stay in Russia.
Москва нравится, Кремль, где мы сейчас с вами работаем.
Hope that you like Moscow and the Kremlin, where we are currently collaborating together.
По плану, в целом мы довольны ситуацией.
As you see, everything is going on as planned. On the whole, we are satisfied with the current economic situation. Most importantly, I'm delighted to be meeting, as you've mentioned, my friend Prime Minister Modi.
Мы давно договаривались увидеться именно в Индии.
We have made a specific arrangement to do so in India because there are numerous topics on which we need to talk, and our collaboration with India spans an extensive array. And of course, the unique nature of our relationship adds another layer of significance.
Ну и хотел бы сказать, что и путь, который прошла Индия с момента завоевания.
I also want to highlight that India's progress over the past 77 years since gaining independence, an extremely brief span in historical terms, has been substantial indeed, and India has truly come a long way in development.
Знаете, когда мы живем в текущей...
I will discuss this further below. You know, as we go about our daily lives, we often fail to notice the changes happening right before our eyes. We scarcely ever take note of them.
Если посмотреть чуть-чуть назад, то
Yet, if you glance even slightly into the past and reflect on what has occurred in India, it's almost like a miracle. For example, few people recognize that life expectancy in India has nearly doubled during this period.
We will talk about longevity in some time from now.
Да, хорошо, поговорим обязательно, но во всяком случае...
We will definitely discuss that. Anyway, our relationship with India is advancing in numerous fields. It's a pleasure to meet Prime Minister Modi again, with whom we have both a professional and a personal, friendly relationship.
So, may I ask you, you just talked about the Indo-Russian ties, and it dates back to almost more than 7 decades. Dosti in Hindi and druzba in Russian. This friendship dates back to more than 7 decades. My question to you is, how do you assess the strength of this friendship in today's time? And what would you say about Prime Minister Narendra Modi and to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whom you call your dost?
По премьер-министру.
About the Prime Minister.
Yeah?
Вы знаете,
You know, the world is evolving rapidly, and this pace keeps getting faster, which is plainly visible to all.
вот это все видят очень хорошо.
The global configuration is changing with new centers of power emerging, and the global power landscape is changing too. Therefore, it's crucial to ensure stability among major nations, since this forms the groundwork for gradual progress in both bilateral and international relations.
Она создает определенную базу, основу.
In this context, our collaborative endeavors with Prime Minister Modi carry significant weight because they transcend our mutual ties.
Работа вместе с премьер-министром Моди имеет очень большое значение.
Given its direct relevance to both nations, ensuring stability in key areas of engagement is crucial, as it helps secure the fulfillment of our objectives.
То стабильность в некоторых отраслях взаимодействия.
Prime Minister Modi sets very challenging tasks for the country, and for himself in the first place, then for the administration, and eventually for the nation.
Ставит перед страной и перед собой прежде всего, потом перед правительством и перед страной.
Take, for example, his famous pitch, Make in India. It has a practical dimension, including for our bilateral relations.
В том числе и в двухсторонних наших отношениях. Мы когда встречаемся, он все время.
When we meet, he always says, let's do this, let's do that, let's look at this area and that.
Я готов их так, готов буду.
I can list them all.
Поэтому у нас много, очень много.
Therefore, we have a lot of practical areas of cooperation.
But before Gita takes on to the next question, one little small, very interesting question, because when you met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in SCO, and there was this picture and video of you and him going in a car, and we're showing it to our viewers right now. You were traveling in a car with him. Was it pre-planned, or how did it go about? How did it happen? And what did you discuss in the car?
Вы знаете, обсуждали текущие вопросы.
We have just gone over the current topics. This wasn't prearranged. We simply stepped out, and my car was waiting. I asked, would you like to come along? That's all there's to it. A gesture of human solidarity, camaraderie, and friendship. No hidden scheme was involved. We climbed into the car like old friends and talked en route. We always have things to discuss. What's more, we continued our conversation and just remained in the car. Eventually, I suggested, let's go. They're already waiting for us. There's nothing special here. It simply indicates that we have matters to discuss, and those matters are very important to us.
Right. President Sir, the fact that you're going to go to India, you just said that both leaders are going to cement the guarantees that you give each other. What are the kind of announcements that we can expect? We've heard about technology transfer, we've heard about trade enhancement. What are the solid announcements during this visit? And I ask you this is because the world, and you know who I mean, would be watching.
The
world would be watching our visit. There is no big deal here. India is an enormous country, home to 1.5 billion people, boasting a growing economy with a 7% annual growth rate, leading among major global powers. After all, Mr. Modi has made this possible. It's something both the Indian nation and Prime Minister Modi himself can rightfully claim as their achievement. Naturally, there will always be critics who think that improvements could have been more significant, but that's an achievement. We've laid out an ambitious plan for our collaboration in key domains. The most critical areas are indeed forward-looking. I'm referring specifically to high technology. Our partnership with India encompasses such fields as space exploration, energy, notably nuclear power, exemplified by the prominent Kudankulam nuclear power plant project, shipbuilding, and aviation. There are many interesting areas for cooperation that are looking to the future. Take, for example, artificial intelligence. We'll likely discuss it further down the line. AI represents a crucial technology shaping the future, rapidly transforming the world, amplifying possibilities exponentially while simultaneously presenting certain challenges. There are the matters we will discuss, choosing the ones that are the most significant for us, as both Prime Minister Modi and I believe. That's what we will focus on and what we will work on.
Any specific agreement, sir?
Well, of course. However, perhaps we shouldn't reveal them just yet. We will do that during the visit, when we can unveil everything publicly. Then our colleagues will first share with us all the documents they have prepared, and it would require our final approval.
Okay. To the energy sector, yeah.
Okay, just talking about sustainability and trade. There's immense pressure on India and on Russia. When it comes to oil, India has suffered in terms of the kind of pressure that we're seeing from West. How can both countries handle this Western pressure and sanctions?
The issue here is that the pressure you have referred to typically involves employing political instruments to influence normal competition. Our energy cooperation with India remains unaffected by current conditions, fleeting political swings, or indeed the tragic events in Ukraine. Regarding hydrocarbons, well before the Ukrainian situation, our business entities had already built a solid and efficient commercial relationship that is based on mutual trust. It's widely known that one of our leading companies acquired an oil refinery in India. This investment represented one of the largest foreign inflows into the Indian economy, totaling more than $20 billion. Our company has been continuously expanding operations of this refinery, working with its partners, and operating successfully year after year. As a result, India has become one of the major refined product suppliers to Europe, not just because it buys our oil with a discount. It took years to achieve and is in no way connected to the current economic environment. Certain actors clearly dislike India's growing role in international markets owing to its ties with Russia. Consequently, they are seeking means to constrain India's influence for political reasons by imposing artificial obstacles.
Right. Right, President, sir, we did...
Important point to make, but my question to you now would be about defense. And India continues to be the biggest defense buyer, roughly 38% of the market from Russia is bought by India. My question to you, sir, is in view of the sanctions by the US or the tariffs they have laid on India, the arm-twisting methods that are being adopted, and I name it's America. How do you plan to circumvent all this? Will you pull back or push harder?
Но мне кажется, что и Индия, весь мир увидели.
It appears that both India and the world recognize that India cannot continue to be treated the way it was treated 77 years ago. India is a major global player, not a British colony, and everyone must accept this reality. Furthermore, Prime Minister Modi is not someone who succumbs to pressure easily. The Indian people can certainly take pride in their leader. This is absolutely obvious. His stance is unwavering and straightforward without being confrontational. Our goal is not to provoke conflict. Rather, we aim to protect our lawful rights. India does the same. What are the obstacles? Obstacles in settlements. However, over 90% of our transactions are already conducted in national currencies. While some complications arise due to the presence of numerous intermediaries, there are also solutions. We can switch to the existing systems for exchanging electronic messages on financial transactions of the Bank of Russia and of our partners in India. These efforts are ongoing and advancing. Those who attempt to hinder economic ties with third countries ultimately encounter difficulties and suffer losses. I am confident that once this perspective becomes firmly established, such tactics of applying external pressure will fade away.
3 specific questions, sir. Number 1, because during Operation Sindoor, the weapons we had acquired from Russia proved very crucial in our victory. And that is why I would like to ask you specifically about S-400, the air defense system, the 5 S-400s that are awaited by when can we expect that? The second question is on S-500, the more advanced air defense system. And the third question, 5th generation fighter jet, Su-57. How are you going to push for this and what's the update, sir?
You seem to be an expert on the issue, as if we're engaged in negotiations on military technical cooperation. If we delve into the substance, India stands out as one of our reliable and privileged partners in this area. We are not merely selling something to India, and India isn't merely buying something from us in the sphere of defense and security. No. It is a different level, a different quality of relations we have with India, and we value this. We see how India values this relationship too. Why? Allow me to emphasize again. We are not simply selling technology, we are sharing it, and it is a very rare thing to see in the sphere of military technical cooperation. It speaks to the level of trust between the two countries and the level of trust between the two peoples, I would put it this way. We have a broad portfolio indeed, including naval construction, rocket and missile engineering, and aircraft engineering. You have just mentioned the Su-57 aircraft. India operates several other Russian-made aircraft too. And there's the production of armored vehicles. India is manufacturing our renowned T-90 tanks. Trust me when I tell you that these tanks rank among the best in the world. Moreover, the famous BrahMos missile, a joint venture between Russia and India, is manufactured primarily at Indian facilities. Therefore, Prime Minister Modi's Make in India initiative should be implemented in this area as well. The Kalashnikov is certainly an important weapon, but we have been discussing high, one might even say cutting-edge technologies. Given the combat experience in using certain types of weapons, their value has multiplied manifold. Now, Indian military specialists, thanks to their strong ties with our military, understand clearly how and in what circumstances a particular weapon performs best, and where and when it should be deployed. This is an extremely important understanding, which is shared by both the Indian and Russian sides.
Right. President, sir, I have to go back to your oil question because you spoke about strategic autonomy, which is what India has been talking about. Strategic autonomy, decide for India's interests. But has India reduced Russian intake of oil after pressure from the West?
Well, there is a certain decline in overall trade turnover during the first 9 months of this year. This is just a minor adjustment. Overall, our trade turnover stands almost at the same level as before. I can't give you exact monthly figures right now, but trade in petroleum products and crude oil, as well as the production of petroleum products for consumers of oil, Russian oil, is running smoothly in India.
Российской нефти в Индии идет абсолютно ритмично. Я знаю настроение российских.
I know the sentiment of Russian partners, of Russian companies.
Они считают, что их индийские.
They believe their Indian counterparts are reliable and very serious people.
Right. The other important aspect in terms of cooperation between India and Russia is the nuclear front. Russia has been one of the biggest movers when it comes to nuclear facilities in India. Are we looking at important announcements on the nuclear front? Nuclear today is a sensitive issue for Russia.
Есть.
Yes, of course we have some announcements to make. We are indeed one of the biggest movers, as you have noted. Speaking seriously, we're not movers, we are producers of the world's most advanced and reliable equipment for nuclear power plants. The Russian company Rosatom builds and operates more nuclear reactors for nuclear power plants abroad than any other company in the world. 22 nuclear units. The well-known facility and our joint project, the Kudankulam plant, is one of the leaders in this regard. These are large units. They operate efficiently and, I reiterate, have proven to be very useful. There are some announcements you have just asked about. What is it about? The news is that Russia is probably the only country in the world today capable of building, and actually does build, small nuclear power plants.